Chapter 4584. At this moment, between the vastness of the heavens and the earth, there were only two figures walking slowly. One of them was young and straight, like a sharp sword with Tibetan fronts waiting to be opened. Another old man in white is also thin and straight, like a blunt sword with a sharp edge, converging Tao Guang. There is a broken avenue circulating in its entire body, and there are immortal soldiers converging in the thick soil waiting to be hidden, and the vast divine power of the domineering sky fills every inch of space. But Jian Wushuang didn't have half-hearted enthusiasm, but he followed but stopped firmly and moved forward. From time to time, there are still avenues that have not been damaged, and they want to be close to Jian Wushuang, and they are waved away by the front stop. Where is this going? Jian Wushuang secretly said to himself, and at the same time began to look at the environment of Shino. Time is here without any passing value. Everything seems to stop at the moment when it died billions of years ago. Why do people like you come here for this reason? He stopped and turned his head and asked. Jian Wushuang was silent, and after a moment, he explained the catastrophe between the two universes. When it comes to the divine power universe has fallen, Jian Wushuang no longer have the mood to continue to talk down. After he stopped listening to his narrative, he didn't make too much statement, but only issued a small sigh. Jian Wushuang no longer felt much sadness in his heart. He had long understood that only the endless breakthrough to the top can protect everything he wanted to guard. Now it is a great fortune. It's all about the magical universe, and Jian Wushuang dare not relax in the slightest. Before I die, I will be ashamed of everything I do. Jian Wushuang secretly vowed. His eyes became hotter. In the next march, even Jian Wushuang, who was in a state of mind, began to get a little anxious. In such a majestic and mighty divine power, even if it was one day of realization, it was something that I had never dared to imagine before. But there was no sign of stopping at all, which made Jian Wushuang's state of mind slightly shaken. He seemed to be able to see through his mind, and the sound of stoppage came to his ears. Is it too late? Wu Jinshuang was embarrassed and said, ashamed. When he stopped, he raised his head and smiled, and then stretched his fingers forward. Don't worry, your way is just ahead. It is like seeing the moon and seeing the moon. Everything changes in Jian Wushuang's eyes. The godless power rose in the wind, and thousands of soldiers rolled on the ground straight into the sky, with billions of gods connecting them. The dazzling and magnificent divine power directly smashed the entire chaotic cloud, and the countless soldiers seemed to reopen their consciousness and roam freely above the sky. The next moment, like a galloping dragon, thousands of magic soldiers fell into the ground like a falling star. The supreme divine power spreads like a lotus flower, sweeping away completely to the ground. Jian Wushuang's heart is terrified. If the divine power is plundered, let alone him, I am afraid that it will be difficult for the top supreme to survive. But the scene envisioned in his heart did not appear, and I saw that the stop was standing there like an épée, and one stroke with one hand was like a curtain, and the vast divine power swept across the ground suddenly surged into the sky like a giant sea gate. Boom! Boom! The supreme divine power collided with the upper sky like the most magnificent picture. The divine power dissipated by itself, and it turned into a star-shaped huamang slowly falling below the heavens and the earth. You are sacred, ancient, and chaotic. That is the charm that blends with the breath of eternity. Jian Wushuang stood in place, holding back his inner shock and catching the falling huamang. When the huamang enters the water, it will naturally melt into the meridians just by sticking to the skin. This is the breath of the avenue? Jian Wushuang was completely shocked. In huamang, almost like a rain curtain, every trace had a different avenue. Follow me. Shi Diao smiled and stepped into the avenue, composed of thousands of magic soldiers. Jian Wushuang's strong endured the fiery heart, strode directly to this good fortune. He was only the first step, and his feet were pierced by a powerful gun. Sun Shun's blood dripped down the tip of the gun, but Jian Wushuang's figure just shook slightly, then proceeded firmly. Every step he took, the sharp soldiers would easily tear every inch of his skin. Bianningrun's blood was pouring from the soles of his feet and calves. However, Jian Wushuang did not feel as if he did not feel any stagnation. He was like the most devout and firm worshipper, stepping forward step by step. Behind him, on the avenue composed of divine power, a layer of shining blood was left. Qi Jian Wushuang is supporting. The soldier, who can cut even the soul, left deep marks on his feet and calf, and the pain in his body was far less than 1/10 of the pain of his soul being cut. The flesh and blood on the sole of the lame foot was cut, and the deepest part of the skin was exposed. The firm state of mind began to shake, and the figure of the stop was ahead. Jian Wushuang felt so distant. I can't help but persevere. For those seniors who have died, I can live. They are all in exchange. Even if I really want to die, it will surely die on the battlefield. Wu Jianwushuang only felt that his mind was open and clear. The pain of the original spirit being cut seemed to have been reduced a lot. I said to Supreme Master Xia, I will fight to break through. That is an oath to others, but also to myself. He seemed to be in pain, his face paled with a smile. An even more incredible scene appeared. Jian Wushuang began to let go of his feet and moved from the original to the running. Like a lotus flower blooming on the avenue of divine power, a thin but firm figure was running forward. I do not know how long it took, only to feel that the huamang in the sky had dissipated, and the sky was back to chaos. Only a splendid avenue is immortal in this sad and humble place. The various horror divine powers are like giant pillars, propping up this unknown tragedy. The derived divine powers seem to be attracted by some kind of power, instead of being excluded, but divided into numerous influxes where they are needed. When a pair of feet that have no stick of flesh stick to the end of this immortal avenue, even if they wait for a long time, they can't help it. The hem of the robe was completely cracked, and the blood seemed to be completely drained. Only those eyes that are still as immortal as the stars have stopped. Chapter 4585. I wonder if it is a dream or an illusion. He reached out to open the avenue of God's understanding in Jian Wushuang's consciousness. At the moment Kai opened, she suddenly woke up. You are awake, little one. She stopped and stood on the dojo constructed by divine power, looking at Jian Wushuang with relief. Qi Jian Wushuang stood up with one hand, and stood up instantly. What is this place? Looking at the huge square built by the vast divine power under his feet, Jian Wushuang has not yet responded. Here, this is where you should be aware. She smirked. Wu Jian Wushuang is not lacking in understanding, but was only mentioned a little bit, and realized instantly that the people who built this doctrine were all the supernatural beings who left behind. Thank you, Mr. Old. Jian Wu doubled his fist, admiring even more when he looked at the stop. Su Shi stopped clapping and said, This is just the best place for you, but the final practice depends on your own creation. Yes, Jian Wushuang promised. When he was about to cross-legged practice, he was stopped. Little guy, this practice has little effect on you. He paused and then raised his right hand and raised it gently. At the time of his ascension, the Tai Luo divine sword hung behind Jian Wushuang rose to the sky, hovering over his head as if possessing a sage. The practice is the process of continuous seeking and preaching. You have touched that level faintly, and I will give you a little insight. Su Shi stopped talking quietly, but every word like a hammer smashed into Jian Wushuang's mind. Since chaos has not opened, when the heavens and the earth are still one, chaos is the Tao. Chaos turns into two turbid airs, and these two airs are two roads. Until the great world is opened, and the poverty is endless, the Tao will increase. The Tao is not extreme, but it is extreme. Some people have a glimpse into the mystery and prove themselves. Some people are so poor that they cannot touch that meaning. Little guy, although you already have a complete Tao, it is not yours, but in your current state, you can realize that trace of meaning, which is rare. All I can do now is to keep you in the way of your heart and keep your mood. In a few words, Jian Wushuang seemed to feel something, but it was fleeting. He almost blurted out, Mr. Old, what you say in your mouth, where can I go if I master it? Step. I didn't care about Jian Wushuang's pride, and stopped and said, Supreme Existence. Boom. In God's consciousness, it is like blowing up a thunderbolt, and Sword Wushuang can no longer be calm. He directly reached out for a move, starting with the Taro Excalibur, and the irresistible power surged. Holding the Tai Luo Excalibur, Jian Wushuang is like a sharp sword out of the sheath, showing its sharp edge. Yes, the power is sharp. It seems to have some insight into kendo. Shidiao seemed somewhat satisfied. Jian Wushuang groaned a little, then firmly said, "Old gentleman, I think I have roughly understood the inner mood of my heart, and determined to enter the Tao with a sword." Suddenly, he nodded and motioned for the sword unparalleled. He is in this vast and mighty divine doctrine, and the divine power he has lost can be replenished almost instantly. The old sword Wushuang is no longer reserved, and the chaotic domineering body is directly opened. Yong Yi, Wu Jian Wushuang directly exhibited the first form of Tai Luo sword code, and the fiery black gas poured from the sword body, transforming into a black ball form, and stopping at the time. He has the blessing of immense divine power, which is just the first form of this sword code, and his momentum and power are several times better than before. When the black ball was about to hit the stop, the space was slightly delayed, and then the black ball was divided into two from the center, which turned into black smoke and dissipated. For this situation, Jian Wushuang did not have any accident, and directly brought the third type of sword to dusk. Suddenly, with the time stop as the center, the pits that should have been broken and collapsed did not appear. Instead, a burst of repulsion forced the sword to fly without double-clicking. He walked back dozens of feet, and the sword unparalleled stabbed the ground to stop the receding body, and the blood in his body rolled violently. With a choked sweet in his throat, he slowly got up. Rather than having no effect on the time, Duan Jindian dusk, but the repulsive damage was fed back to Jian Wushuang, which made him extremely depressed. From time to time, he stayed where he was from beginning to end, moving even one step. Looking at his light and light wind, I'm afraid he hasn't even tried hard. Jian Wushuang adjusted his mentality, took a deep breath, and quietly gave birth to the fourth style. 4 seasons. The quiet and silent Hanmang emerged from the soles of Jian Wushuang's feet, with the blessing of the mighty divine power of the dojo, which swept the entire dojo almost instantaneously. In this mode, even the divine power that supports the operation of the dojo has a momentary stagnation. It's now. Wu Jianso suddenly jumped. The divine power was completely poured into the Tai Luo divine sword, and he went down in the air and stopped violently. Jab's cut, which can almost tear the cosmic dome, left only a pale mark in the air of this sad place. By the time this sword mark cut in front of Shizhan, there were almost only inches. After a while, stop and stretch out in the middle of the food, and just gently pinch the sword mark that was cut, directly killing him. The first shot was stopped, and the sword Jinshuang who had fallen to the ground did not stop. When the sole of the foot stepped on the ground, he ran directly to the stop. Suddenly approaching, a free Tailuobo shriek in the heavens, and the earth emerged from behind Wu Jinshuang. All the previous moves are serving this moment. The huge treasure looks like a mountain. With the sword of Wushuang, it is down. OM. A slight collision sounded quietly. Time seemed to stop. The virtual image of Wu Tailuo's supreme even had time to retreat. The sword Wushuang was still hanging in the air. The sword in his hand stopped at a distance from the palm of his hand, but it was hard to get half an inch. Shizha still stood in place, with the palm of his right hand raised above his head, as if holding a sword generally blocked Jian Wushuang's strongest blow. The person who created this set of swordsmanship has a lot of experience. If he refines it further, he can be regarded as truly mellow. Shi paused quietly, and seemed to be a little sorry, pushing his right hand slightly upwards. In a hurry, as the tide receded, the sword flew out without double-clicking. Chapter 4586. He paused and nodded. That's it. But it's a blessing that this sword can be passed down. I waited for Sword Wuxia to speak, and stopped and said again and again. Separated from chaos, the heavens and the world were born. Although there are thousands of swords, there is really a sword-like sword that can communicate with you. Qi Jian Wuxuang Yi, obviously also thinking about this issue. When he tried to talk about Tai Luo Jian Dian, he didn't say anything. Hey yeah, Tai Luo Jian Dian Baju Qiao has the power to easily break the stars. But does it really fit his own mind? Even if the inheritance is immortal in his own hands, even if he can exert the power of Tai Luo Jian Dian, but it is only the supreme kendo of Tai Luo. Stop talking and say. You need to be clear about every word I say. Your perception of kendo is far beyond what you think. But even if you can see through every kendo and blend in, they are still not yours. Every kendo will belong only to the person who created them. From the moment you practiced this sword classic, in fact, you left a slight sword mark in your mind, and this sword mark is a gap. All you have to do now is find your own kendo. At the same time, his right hand fluttered in the air, and the invisible but tangible waves could make Jian Wuxuang look at him. Although there was nothing in the hand that stopped, the sharp intangible breath made Jian Wuxuang clear. That is an invisible sword, which belongs to the kendo that stops by itself. Wu Jian's unparalleled heart surge. When the Tai Luo divine sword is about to be placed on one side, as time goes by, I will realize the mood that is gradually forming in my heart. There is no glorious sword meaning, some are just the purest one-stroke one. I've been looking for my own kendo, but it's always fleeting, and am afraid that the kendo I realized is incomplete, and it has been put on hold until now. Now I don't run away anymore, even if the sword code would be incomplete. But I don't regret it. Qi Jian Wuxuang opened his eyes violently, and Jin Yanhuamang escaped from his eyes. Stars and godliness began to gather around the palms where Hagi originally raised the wind. One frame at a time, slow to the extreme action is like breaking down the sword in mind. The complex and mysterious to the extreme pattern began to appear around the sword Wuxuang. Yin Shidian had already left Jian Wuxuang far away, and looked at him comfortably from a distance. Melting in all heaven and earth standing outside. Into the sword. Suddenly, the bright divine patterns floating around the body, all gathered under the palm of the right hand of Jian Wuxuang. The invisible sword body, the divine power as the hilt, the long wind condensing the blade, and the pattern in the meantime, a very strange but wanton long sword appeared. This is the sword form of Jian Wuxuang. It is very different from the previous one, but it is better than the previous vast sword. Even if he had held the Taro Excalibur in his hand, and released a sword to break the might of the sky, he never exudes endless magnificent repression as he does now. The long hair breaks the girdle and dances behind him. The pale golden eyes flow out of the glorious Huaman, like the presence of God, exuding endless power. For the first time, the magical powers of Wu Fuyu around the dojo gave birth to agitated breath. The unpowered divine power derived from Sun seems to feel the sword meaning in the gestation, and he is mad from the quartet, and wants to be integrated with it. Suddenly, he waved his hand and added a barrier to the outside of the dojo, blocking worship without subjective power. The long sword with the engraved gold pattern is held high above his head. At this moment, the sword Wuxuang seems to be turned into a sword, and a hazy treasure phase occupies half of the dojo. I have a sword. I would like to invite Mr. Jin now, let's have a look. Shen roar emanated from his chest, and he took off the shape of the sword. Huge treasures are also in shape. The sword full of sacred ritual is a kendo that belongs to the sword unparalleled. Endless shining golden pattern helps the storm rise, and with that sword's potential, it blooms completely. The next moment, the dojo built by divine power trembled, and the shape of the sword came straight. The almost indestructible dojo suddenly tears long natural marks, and at the same time the remaining dojos fall apart quickly. Suddenly, he stopped at the center of the sword's reach, and the handicapped barrier of magical power was almost immediately swallowed up. When the entire dojo was torn in half by the cracks in the heavens, the disappearing dazzling golden divine pattern suddenly turned into a mangju rising from the bottom of the dojo, and eventually swallowed up the entire dojo. The most magnificent and sacred blast lasted for 10 full breaths, and finally ended in a body shape. The divine power Huameng was scattered, and the dojo that was damaged by such a worldly attack slowly emerged. Countless divine powers turned into silk threads to hold the sword unparalleled, and the damaged dojo spilled everywhere like stars. Thousands of mythical soldiers below the dojo also trembled at the same time, seemingly unable to restrain the display of divine power. Laying on top of the divine power, Jian Wushuang's breath was breathless. Although the lost divine power was filled up instantly, the painful meaning of directing to the soul still made Jian Wu dazzled. He is just this kind of prestige, and he is almost drawn to death. If it is displayed in the universe where the divine power cannot be quickly replenished, I am afraid it is a time of fate. Su Shi's figure reappeared, standing on a shard and heading towards Jian Wushuang. Is this your kendo? Shi paused asking. Jian Wushuang stunned then proudly said, This is my way. Su Shi Qingqing's face began to show a smile only said 4 words. It is absolutely stunning. Mr. Xiaolao advised. Jian Wushuang arched, expressing joy. Suddenly she laughed. My advice is not very useful. Everything is what you think and realize. Wu Jianshou shook his head. It is precisely the teachings of the old gentleman that I can dare to take that step. Otherwise I'm afraid I will never stand still. When he paused his head for a moment, Jian Wushuang's sword that was so amazing and brilliant was already fully aware of the dazzling sword issued by his own kendo. Since then, he will surely become more and more fused on his own avenue. What is the extreme state of kendo, do you know? Jian Wushuang groaned for a moment, then said with some uncertainty, Human and sword united? Invisible? Hidden front cover? Su Shi stopped laughing and laughed. He did not refute or agree with Jian Wushuang. Chapter 4587. If it wasn't for the broken dojo slowly being constructed, I am afraid that Jian Wushuang would really take all that happened as a dream. After chanting again and again for a few times, Jian Wushuang returned to God. This old man, who is also a teacher and friend, after a period of time together, is deeply imprinted in the heart of Jian Wushuang. What Shi Tzu did is almost equivalent to saving the last fire of the entire magical universe. Facing the direction where the stoppage disappeared, Jian Wushuang bowed deeply. I have proved my own kendo. Jian Wushuang only feels that the sense of powerlessness facing the future is rapidly weakening, and his future is quickly opening. When Jian Wushuang looked at his realm subconsciously, he couldn't help exclaiming. It turned out that unknowingly, the which belongs to the middle supreme disappeared, as if it was a matter of course, directly promoted to the top of the supreme. Sui, who even needs thousands of years to break through, has unexpectedly made a breakthrough. Jing Ning shook hands and felt the resurgence of the mighty power. Jian Wushuang swept away the previous tiredness and quickly sat down and stabilized. I broke through the complete realm directly, which had never happened before, and he had to deal with it carefully. After the supreme peak, it is the supreme. When Wu Wuhua meditates, the infinite power reappears to float around him like a flood of water. The general cultivation environment of this blissful heaven is just a general tailor-made for Jian Wushuang. While easily stabilizing the realm, it can also distract and consolidate the kendo you just realized. Jian Wushuang, who was extremely sensitive to the meaning of the sword since he was a child, already knew how terrible his first form of kendo was. The power of the first form is the power that the taro of the last form of taro sword can be used. The two are comparable, even more than the Tailuo Jindian. Jian Wushuang has not dared to imagine the upper limit of his kendo. This is my own kendo. Naturally it should be called Wushuang, but how should Jinni be named? Jian Wushuang thought about it, and then he had an answer. It's called Zingahohai Jinni, swordless eyes scorched, setting the name of the supreme sword code that shocked the world in the future. After re-evolving kendo several times, Jian Wushuang fell into a deep sleep with satisfaction. High Supreme is not his goal. Even if he did not enter this sad place at the beginning, the minimum requirement set for himself is Top Supreme. In fact, what he said to Bloodwave Supreme was also spoken to himself. He was originally the top and supreme goal he pursued, but now he has set this goal in a state that was almost unthinkable before. Only if you break through yourself can you win. Everything the vain universe will do today will be returned thousands of times. Broken avenue with the vast divine power flowing around the already asleep Jian Wushuang. From time to time, a little rune hidden into his clothing. In this sorrowful land shrouded by endless divine power, every humble but tenacious breath continued to thrive. Every disciple in the palace of life has fallen asleep for a long time, but from the tight brows, we can see that none of them relax. The humiliation of a bereavement made everyone try their best to break through. From time to time, only a cosmic boat sighed. The short-formed river spirit sat on the railing and looked at the vast place of sadness and glory. His eyes were dazzling, and he didn't know what was thinking. Extremely north of the universe starry sky. For hundreds of millions of years, there have been no stars in the sky. At this moment, there are nearly 100 extreme divine powers. In front of these powerful supremes, the nine-headed zombie gods opened their pupils together, staring closely at the sight wrapped in chaos and mighty power. This is the forbidden area where the ants in the divine universe fled. The grotesque voice of the murmur resounded from the mouth of the zombie. On the side of the side, the emperor of the god of refining god nodded, and his face looked ugly. Only then did they let them escape. Since their ants can get in, why can't you get in? The zombie looked at 8 Desolation. Enin said, "Did you really get in, or did you let them go through the enemy?" At that time, Yao Huangzhen's face was even more ugly, and Shuli was released directly. What do you mean? The zombie was furious, and the more horrifying virtual force directly crushed it, as if the realm of the abyss of the heavens almost ran to kill. When the 8 desolate gods were about to burst into a virtual explosion, a figure with a thick smoky body appeared, and they shot directly to suppress the supernatural powers of the 2 snakes and the 8 desolate gods. "It's you again, Eat One." The zombie was furious, and his 9 heads shouted in unison, "Do you really want to oppose this seat?" The black smoke dissipated, taking a look at the zombie and smiling coldly. "Stupid. You don't deserve to be opposed to me. Now the 2 universes are at war. You privately beheaded the gods and clans of this universe. Really, when the entire virtual universe is you, whatever it takes. You." The zombie was dumb, and was brought into a high hat out of thin air, which made him speechless, and he stopped speaking after a cold hum. "One day, I'm going to blast your head into dregs." Zombie secretly resents. Qi Yini no longer said much, and his eyes changed from the place of sadness to the emperor's ancestral site on the other side. "I want to kill all the possibilities or impossible in the bud. All of them will die in my hands." A glance glanced at the cold, then 2, 3 and so on emerged behind him in turn. "If you want great creation, will follow me and go to the emperor's ancestral site." After uttering this sentence, Yen first took the phagocyte to the emperor's site. The face of Subahuang Suzun is still ugly. He didn't look at the zombie god, and directly followed him with a group of Suzuns. The remaining vanity was about to move, but he was afraid of the zombie, and did not dare to leave. Finally, an Erkin Shuzuan dared to step forward, and before he spoke, he was shattered into blood by the snake god. "Sooner or later, one day, I will slaughter you up and down," Zombie said fiercely, and then ordered the remaining Shuzuan to go directly to the emperor's ancestral site. The cataclysmic battle between the 2 sides of the universe, even if both the of the universe and the of vanity disappeared, there was no sign of stopping, and the ancient grievances accumulated, as if finally there was a vent, and it was out of control. 25,000 years have passed. Chapter 4588. Regarding the breath of all things, I am afraid that it will be difficult for anyone to compare with this thin, and even awkward figure. I was silent for nearly 5,000 years, and the Lord Helling jumped up and fell to the ground like a fish. I was in front of him, the first group of Life Shrine disciples to meditate to this day. Blowing his nose, He Ling's small eyes widened arrogantly. It seems that the enlightenment of these disciples who are closest to them is about to melt. He seems to confirm He Ling's speculation. A long breath revolves from the whole body of a disciple, and at the same time, Nearly 1,000 long breaths recover at the same time. The character of Luoha Ling shuddered, and ultimately dominated the realm. That is the breath that belongs to the ultimate realm. If it is just the breath of the ultimate dominator, it is naturally difficult to comprehend the magical eyes of the river spirit in the river. But now it belongs to the breath of the ultimate dominator. But it has reached 3,000. What kind of concept is that? Only the disciples of the 3,000 temples who stayed in the outermost layer, only after 5,000 years of enlightenment, they have reached the ultimate dominance, as if they had exhausted their lead. This is just the disciples at the outermost periphery. What about disciples who are one step ahead? Luo Heling turned back from the previous shock, rising from the bottom of his heart with uncontrollable excitement. He knows that the entire divine power universe, the Temple of Life, has been saved. As soon as he thought about this, He Ling could no longer fall asleep, and rushed to the deepest place like a child. He had to take a good look. The little guy who was eternally proud, and growing all the time would give him what a surprise. However, just when he was raising his feet and preparing to leave, He Ling realized that enlightenment was ethereal, and he and heaven and earth were one thing. If he disturbed himself, the consequences would be unthinkable. He thought for a second, and He Ling gave up, and said with a lip, "Forget it. Don't bother the kid first. It's not too late to talk until he breaks through." After he made up his mind, He Ling jumped into the spacecraft, stared at two small eyes, and observed the disciples who were about to wake up. As the breath of ultimate became richer and purer, the 3,000 disciples on the outermost side woke up at the same time. God, I have reached the ultimate. I actually reached that state. How many years have you cultivated? And it's really terrible to reach such a state. From the beginning, he didn't believe his disciples and fell into ecstasy. And then he wanted to move on. However, at this time, the coughing sound from the spacecraft attracted the attention of 3,000 disciples. "Yes, Lord Heling? I won't be dazzled, Lord He Ling is not dead yet." Listening to the noise, River Aura almost jumped off the deck. "Enough! Who said that your adult Heling is dead? I tell you, even now I can live in feng shui even if I am stuck in a virtual universe," said the insignificant little old man with his hands on his hips, and his beard staring. Then he said earnestly again, "Okay, you have to shut up, Lord He Ling. You do and want to go forward now. Stay here safely. Do and disturb the remaining disciples' practice. You have just been promoted to the ultimate master. Be sure to be stable, don't forget. The realm above you is the realm of clouds and mud." Luo Heling's remarks made the 3,000 disciples instantly hot. How could they not understand that the supremacy was vain? In other words, there is a war between the two universes. At present, they are still at best dead cannon fodder. They have no effect. Only when they are on the Supreme Court can one or two enemies be buried before death. Now in such a great place, even if it is a second of vain, it will never be allowed. The disciple with a good mood immediately sat down again, and started a new round of realization. The other disciples also entered the country again, after investigating their own situation. The divine power of the universe fell. As the final salary, the expectations and missions they shoulder will force them to grow. I waited for all the disciples to sit down. He Ling returned to the previous position, and I stared at the chaos, but couldn't see the sky. When will all this happen? When will it be back on track? After another 1,000 years, the second batch of disciples began to recover, and they also reached the ultimate dominance state. And even individual disciples with deep understanding began to touch that level of barriers. After Luoha Ling stepped up and conducted some preaching, they continued to enter the perception. "Hey, it seems that they are inseparable from me." He Ling sighed, raising his hands behind his back and preparing to patrol again. As He Ling turned around, a majestic beam of divine power rose up. Although it was particularly inconspicuous in this vast divine power, it made He Ling tremble. The concussion that symbolized the achievement of supremacy was raised among the third group of disciples, who sat down and realized. Next, the second supreme divine power rose. The third way. The fourth way. Seventh. A total of 7 supreme divine powers rose to the sky and soon returned to peace. He did not cause any thunderous thunder, heaven and earth strange sounds, and some were just symbols of the supreme divine power. The 7 disciples who obtained the supreme avenue first stood up and looked at the supreme divine power that emerged from their bodies in disbelief. Certified supreme. One of the older middle-aged disciples murmured softly, and when he saw the true supreme power rising from the wind, his eyes turned red instantly. It seems that the magical universe has really been saved. He inspired. A gratification that was very different from his acting style was revealed from his eyes. The sorrowful land doesn't know how time passes, but the boring river spirit counts the days every day. Then at this time of 8,000 years, the heavenly supreme regained consciousness. The immense divine power rushed straight up into the dome. The divine supreme divine power became deeper, and finally settled in a half-step invincible supreme. 28,000 years ago, it broke through the real natural divide. The true invincible supreme will only be a matter of time. Immediately following the awakening of the Emperor Tianxian, there is also the supreme axe. He also took that step, reaching a half-step invincible supremacy. The two encouraged each other, entrusted Healing a little, and again had a second perception. Chapter 4589. There, it is the dojo that belongs only to Jian Wushuang. The is spontaneously constructed into a dome by various supreme divine powers, and the charm is filled with the whole dojo from top to bottom, shining golden and brilliant. Beneath the dojo, there are thousands of magic soldiers who act as the cornerstones and inject the charm into the dojo together. At the center of the huge dojo, a very thin figure was sitting there, and the wide black robe on the upper body was torn by the mighty divine power, exposing the exquisite figure showing the divine pattern. The tadpoles seem to be scattered with pale golden hair and hang down on the ground, like the Milky Way starfall. Taro's Excalibur stands on one side, the blade clears in the sheath. For 8,000 years, Jian Wushuang has maintained such a posture for 8,000 years. The vast divine power poured into the body from every pore and nourished every inch of meridians. Every 100 years, Jian Wushuang spit out a cloud of breath, and then went back and forth. Wu Gang's unparalleled kendo was re-exercised for 2,000 years. For the past 2,000 years, he has given out his sword in the consciousness all the time, closed his sword, and perfected the perfect harmony of the swords, rivers, seas, and swords. Until the 3,000 years, Jian Wushuang reluctantly constructed the entire Xinghe Lake, Hai and Jiani into a frame, and the first form of his battle with the time stopped had only one of the simplest star characters. Although the meaning of a single word is simple, they eventually merged together to cover an endless universe. This is the kendo of Jian Wushuang and his ambition. When the whole kendo was sharpened, Jian Wushuang, who was in the chaos consciousness, wanted to start by opening the gift given to him by the predecessor of the palace. I don't know if it's the same breath, or if he shakes his hands. When opening up Dao Yin's spiritual practice, the feeling of the universe also opens at the same time. Two majestic spiritual insights that are so majestic that they can't be added, directly faint them. I passed away for another 2,000 years. Haha happy. A loud laughter trembled in the trembling dome, and a thick and restrained divine power surged like a water dragon, completely spreading in the sky. The great axe supreme who reperceives again wakes up. And this time waking up, he has reached the incredible invincible supreme state. Just for 2,000 years, the great axe supreme has been invincible from half a step, reaching the true invincible state. Originally required tens of hundreds of chaos, and now it only takes 2,000 years. I am afraid that since the beginning of chaos, it is hard to see an example. The giant axe who invaded the invincible supreme divine realm swept away the previous fatigue. His eyes were like bright star fields, exuding a glorious huamang from the inside, and the solemn treasure. Immediately afterwards, the heavenly supreme regained consciousness and went straight into the invincible supreme god's realm. The two old friends who are not knowing how many chaos periods accompanied each other and smiled, their eyes were wet. Because of insufficient strength, the temple of life has been repeatedly humiliated. Because of insufficient strength, the divine power universe has fallen, and countless days of arrogance have been destroyed. Only by constantly breaking through can we protect what we want to protect. Heaven, the giant axe smiled proudly. You and I are now in the invincible supreme state of God. How about fighting today? That's what it is. Tianyi laughed loudly, and the bow of the that utterly destroyed the sky quietly appeared in his hands. The giant axe retreated hundreds of feet at once, and at the same time countless godless powers began to build a dojo. In the Xiaoxiao dojo, the two statures instantly erupted into an invincible supremacy. The incomparable vast divine power no longer escapes the world like half-step invincible supreme, but emerges in the whole body, as if possessing the intellect, and is quite restrained. Two invincible extremes start the most hardy battle. God bowed tightly, using his own divine power as an arrow, and shot out in an instant, like a phoenix tail feather, swept towards the giant axe supreme. The giant axe greeted the storm, and the two hit each other heavily, and the resulting burst directly toward the dojo just constructed. Countless crystals of quiet Huameng waited for the bow again, and shot at the giant axe with the laugh of the heavenly supreme. The giant axe is backed by an axe, and his body is transformed, and he is confronted with the supreme power with the potential of opening the sky. Crimson divine power against the crystal faint blue mansions, which belongs to the invincible and supreme power, shatters the dojo again, and completely disperses in the heavens and the earth. Because the entire place of tragedy is constructed by more ancient and vast divine power, the supernatural powers of the giant axe, and the heavenly supreme will be greatly restricted. Maybe it's because of Chongxiu's war intentions that disturbed the silent power. I began to woke up with some disciples with secondary perceptions. The disciple of awakening, at the very least, is the ultimate dominating realm, and at the same time, the new supreme divine power begins to appear. From the original 7 supreme divine realms, it began to increase to double digits, and still has an upward trend. Maybe she felt a certain kind of breath, and the coldness awakened from her perception, and a whole new kind of power rose from her meridian. The magnificent dark blue divine power rushed into the sky, and then dissipated, cold as frost, straight into the supreme divine realm. It's a bit noisy. A slightly lazy voice sounded, and Jiu Jia Wang, with white shirt and white hair, awoke from his feelings. There is no wave breaking through the realm, and even the divine power is not exposed for half a minute, so that it usually seems like a good night's sleep. But the more the Jujia King is, the more horrible it is. Like the magic sword that hides the front cover, it reveals its sharpness and plainness. A deep stream of streamer flowed from his eyes, a slight smile hung from the corner of his mouth. Is it possible to reach such a level of supreme power? If I am only half a point better. He only knew that the king of the 9 dragons, and it took him only 8,000 years to completely cross a great realm, and touch that more mysterious realm. He is confident that he will be invincible in a chaotic era. And that guy, what kind of Tinjiao attitude will he appear in? Jujia Wang Shun's pure eyes looked at the dojo in the chaos in the distance. Sun Lanlan awoke. She got the Tao under the seat of the cosmos, and she was already indifferent to the realm, and it was because of her mood that she made one jump to the highest peak of Tao. She is not too concerned about her advancement in her realm. From the moment she wakes up, Meimu is full of worries and looks at Jian Shuang's dojo. Unless the realm of divine power reaches the height of the universe, all personal strengths that cannot be weighed on the battlefield will be extremely weak in the face of decision-makers who can save the calamity. Suddenly, Lan Lan has already regarded Jian Wushuang as a decision-maker who can turn the tide. Although the divine power universe has long been occupied, the ever-increasing salary and wages are still growing under the pressure of the virtual universe. Everyone's eyes are converging towards the bright dojo. Together they are looking forward to that guy who has grown up tenaciously and never slacked off half a minute, creating a real miracle. Chapter 4590. When the unknown number of divine dojos was destroyed, the 2 invincible supremes both stopped, and the divine power that overwhelmed the dome was fully absorbed. Happy, really happy. Tianyin Supreme closed his bow and laughed loudly. The giant axe supreme nodded frequently, proudly saying, Now even if you are against the top 6 Mark virtual lords, this one has a fighting power. He retracted the supernatural power, and the two fell to the ground. Congratulations to the two for being invincible. Lon Lon stepped forward arching. The giant axe first said, "Thank you, Lon Lon. The two of us can be promoted to an invincible state. It is also heavenly pity for my magical universe." Even before 10,000 years have passed, the Great Axe Supreme and the Heavenly Supreme have both advanced to the invincible, except for the pity of the heavens. And it seems that there are no other adventures in this great land of creation. Tianyu Supreme followed with a smile. "I think our invincible Supreme should soon add another one." Oh. A few people's eyes suddenly looked at the distant Bloodwave Supreme. The divine doctrine surrounding the supreme blood power is like a huge golden cocoon, completely covering his body, and outsiders can only vaguely see his approximate body. The Supreme Axe frowned slightly and said to himself, "Bloodbook is a half-step invincible supreme, and it has been a long time to indulge in invincibility. It should be much easier than the two of me. There are no signs of breakthrough. Relax. After the blood pool has successfully advanced to the invincible state, I am afraid that the strength will be much deeper than you and me." Tian Di supremely responded. With almost infinite years to get along, he never doubted the strength of the old man. The axe nodded. "I hope so." Only Lan Lan's eyes had a subtle and uncertain change when he looked at the doctrine of the supreme enlightenment. On the side of the side, Jiu Jiawang, with white hair who was slightly lonely, looked at the dojo that belonged to Jian Wushuang from beginning to end. He desperately wanted to see what kind of posture this ancient evil, Tianjiao, would appear, and at the same time how far he would throw himself off. I'm afraid he doesn't even know when he took Jian Wushuang as a standard game, and became the object he pursued. Extreme Axe, the King of Nine Calamities suddenly said, looking earnestly. Can the Nine Calamity be a sudden? Can the Supreme Axe supreme step by step to test the mood of Nine Calamity? He heard the words from the giant axe, and did not show his displeasure. Instead, he looked at the King of Nine Calamities more admirably. Of course, I can also take a look at what the same arrogance will bring to me. The King Nine Calamities promised, and ascended to the sky with the Great Axe Supreme. The vast divine powers that have survived in ancient times seem to be very sensitive to war intentions. They are like spectators who are not too big to see the excitement and form a party dojo. Jiu Supreme, I won't keep my hand in a moment. Supreme Axe smiled, and the axe appeared in his hand. Xiejushin Supreme. The King of Nine Kings responded. The power of the top Supreme instantly appeared through the body, like a tide. The giant axe Supreme stood on the spot and waved his hand sharply, and the great terror power that belonged to the invincible Supreme suddenly erupted, just as the heavenly gate opened, and the giant sea frenzy loomed. He was just a face-to-face, and the power of Jiu Jiawang, who belonged to the Supreme, was suppressed at once. He just feels like a lone boat in a giant sea, which may be destroyed at any time. Even the flow of his supreme divine power is much slower. The giant axe lay down on the soles of his feet, and the axe in his hand rose to the storm. Numerous patterns rose from the axe handle and completely wrapped it. Chapter 4591. Time goes by, and adults healing day and day, and the record of dedication 12,000 years past. All the sleeping shrine disciples are fully awake. In this great creation, except for the disciples who died first in the passage, there are more than 11,000 disciples remaining, and they have achieved the ultimate domination. In addition, there are nearly 300 disciples who have successfully transformed into the highest level. There are more than 300 extremes. Even if the dragon family has been handed down so far, such a background, this is a scene that no one can imagine. At the beginning of the day, Supreme Master Sun and Supreme Axe could see this scene. Old tears crossed, and immediately knelt down to the place where it had disappeared 3 times. The disciples of all the temples of life have since really become the ultimate whole cards of the entire God universe. Although these 300 Supreme are only elementary, as long as they break through the other Supreme realm of that layer of cloud and mud, then the middle and higher realms will come to fruition. Since all disciples have awakened, the Great Axe Supreme and the Heavenly Supreme have intensified the cultivation of all disciples to help them stabilize their realm. After the battle with the Supreme Axe, the king of the 9 kings of the 9 dragons regained consciousness and woke up after 2,000 years. The original sharp power began to tend to be introverted, and there was a great potential for hiding the hidden weapon. The streamer in his eyes was even earlier, and the most difficult trace of marks began to fade in him. Everything is going to flourish. Only 2 people still showed no signs of waking. One is Jian Wushuang, and the other is Supreme of Blood. For this reason, the giant axe paid out 12 disciples, responsible for observing and patrolling the 2. Brother, how long will it take our palace master to wake up? It's been 12,000 years, I'm afraid. Before the young disciple's voice fell, his head was hit with a chestnut. Let's talk a lot. Then you can't stand it after more than 10,000 years. What will you do if you are to be promoted to the Supreme? And you will sit tens or hundreds of times. The middle-aged disciple called Sange said seriously. Young disciples rubbed their heads, clamoring and not speaking. This patrol team of 12 people, only the middle-aged man is the elementary and supreme. The rest are the ultimate domination, and he will perform the natural observing sword unparalleled dojo. I stepped forward, and one side had no subjective divine power to naturally hold up the middle-aged disciples, and swept towards the most vast dojo. He now encloses the entire giant dojo of Jian Wushuang, and is covered with a thick layer of golden mansions, which makes it harder to see the inside. Routine as usual. After the middle-aged disciple peeped through the gap, he turned around and left. When he stepped on the footless power, ready to fall, the sky suddenly shook suddenly. Then the unpowered divine power under his feet suddenly went crazy and shot back uncontrollably. Due to the sudden incident, the middle-aged disciple fell from the sky unprotected and fell heavily on a dog to eat. 3 brothers. The 11 other disciples rushed over and helped the middle-aged disciples. It seems that these divine powers are really not so well controlled. He shook his head helplessly and grinned, looking up subconsciously, and suddenly trembled. I saw the huge dojo hovering in the air for thousands of years, and began to seep thick golden water to the bottom. How can this be? The next moment, countless strands of gold water suddenly rushed like galaxies in the sky. Quick, leave this place. The middle-aged disciple reacted first, and immediately released the supreme divine power to promote 11 people. The golden water rushed, as if opening the heavenly gate, pouring wildly to the earth. Suddenly, the huge dojo covered with dust for a long time now shattered. Stars scattered, Baoguang flowed. Thousands of silent soldiers trembled in unison, as if waiting for their former masters. Jin Shui Milky Way vented, but the moment it touched the ground, it condensed into an avenue of divine power. The huge dojo shattered, and the magnificent majesty shone through the world. He was guiding the 10,000 disciples to meditate on the giant axe and the heavenly supreme, and they looked at the golden and magnificent place, and immediately turned into 2 divine powers to fly away. Qi Lanlan trembled, and looked at that position in disbelief. Wang Jijiawang slowly opened his eyes filled with smiles, and the next moment he rose to the sky, rushing towards the road. He Ling, who was sleeping on the deck, heard the change and jumped straight away. It's changed. After seeing this scene, the other tens of thousands of disciples looked at each other and rushed away in a hurry. The avenue of divine power constructed by the thick and magnificent golden water is full of magnificent power, and there are thousands of gestures of divine power illusion, which are magnificent and sacred. The shattered divine power dojo falls slowly like thousands of stars. Everyone's eyes are staring at the sky, the most dazzling one among thousands of stars. The naked and slender upper body is covered by countless golden mansions, and the magnificent power is revealed from his eyes and from every pore. This body, all that is left is a pair of broken black robe pants around his waist, but even then it is difficult to hide the divine power. He seems to have returned to the most original existence. Pure Jinmong blended with purple, and appeared lightning-like all over him. Hit him, it's the sword unparalleled. When the soles of the feet touched the ground, the stars of the sky over the sky fell, and the golden patterns on his body. The sized lotus buds bloomed together. Hualien blooms on the road. Wu Zi retreats from his pupils, and Jian Wushuang wakes up from a long and chaotic dream in the beginning of the world, and walks on this road blankly. Every time he took a step, his consciousness became clear. Long hair spreading to the ends of the hair hangs down the avenue, and every step is flowed with godliness. Everyone is holding their breath. Even if they have achieved the invincible supreme acts in heaven too, they feel a kind of unspeakable pressure. That pressure is the purest repression, irrelevant to the realm, and it is another more mysterious level of life. King Zhijia's eyes did not have disbelief or jealousy. Some were just the joy from the heart, and the most sincere fiery. It was his own pride that could not be touched by any thoughts. Wu Jian's unparalleled realm. How could I not reach the King of Nine? The great giant axe first reacted. Chapter 4592. Countless strands of jinmang were scattered in the wind, blowing to the crowd with the breeze. You don't have to be restrained, you all get up. Jian Wushuang laughed softly. Thousands of disciples only felt gentle under their knees, and a gentle force held everyone up. Xia Wushuang Gongzhu. All the disciples joined together. A body of godlike mansions flowing like tassel converged in his body. He flew into the presence of the giant axe, and the of heaven. Looking at the godlike figure in front of him, the eyes of the giant axe supreme were slightly moist. Only to say a sentence of Wushuang Gongzhu secretly wept. Seeing this, Tianzuan Extreme stunned him with his elbow, and whispered, I said the old man, the master of Wushuang Palace has to go out. You should be happy. Why are you crying again? You care for the husband? The husband wants to cry, and how to cry, no one can control it. The giant axe child turned back with the same temper. Tina Supreme shook his head helplessly. Jian Wushuang naturally understands the pain that the Supreme Axe Supreme can't let out. Then he put his palm on the shoulder of Supreme Axe, solemnly saying, Extreme Axe, you can rest assured how the virtual universe came. I will let them roll back, and the debt they owe must be used blood to pay it back. The great axe heard the words, and quickly wiped his tears with his sleeves, arching. The Supreme Axe under the seat of the Temple of Life is supreme, and is willing to be dispatched by the master of the Wushuang Palace. The Supreme God of Life under the seat of the Temple of God is willing to be dispatched by the master of the Wushuang Palace. The Supreme God of Heaven also said. King Jiujia smiled and arched his hand. Jiujia Supreme, under the seat of the Temple of Life, is willing to be dispatched by the master of Wushuang Palace. Jian Wushuang bowed his head, looking at the disciples of Wanming Life Palace, and rushed towards Xiaoyu. Master Wushuang Palace. In this spiritual practice, there are more than 11,000 disciples in this palace, and 300 disciples have been promoted to the supreme state. Ordinary battlefield. While walking in this path of misery, the great Axe Supreme analyzed the general situation, but the battle between the invincible Supreme and the 6 marks void. The giant axe did not continue. As early as the start of this catastrophe, the nearly 46 marked virtual lords of the virtual universe almost controlled the entire battlefield. The high-end combat power cannot be balanced, so the direction of this war will still tilt towards the virtual universe. What's more, there is a horrible existence of the zombie beyond the invincible realm. Jian Wushuang didn't speak at first. The snake gave it to me. As for the number of invincible supremacy, wait for the tragedy, and then raise 1 or 2. The axe nodded supremely, and then seemed to realize something, and he was shocked. The King of 9 robbers also paused, and a bitterness appeared from his eyes. Is it just for 10,000 years that Jian Wushuang has grown to such an extent? He thought that with his top-notch cultivation, he could fight against Jian Wushuang no matter how bad it was, but everything changed. Jian Wushuang's target is already facing the zombie of that virtual universe. Now I am half-step invincible and supreme. It doesn't matter if I want to come to the zombie of the virtual universe. Jian Wushuang added. The shock rose from the eyes of the giant axe and the heavens. Jian Wushuang was able to slay the supreme divine realm with the ultimate of the realm. He will always be killed across the border to create miracles. Can you even get over that day? However, the sword Wushuang groaned for a while, looking at the great axe supreme. It should be troublesome for the great axe. The giant axe is supremely enlightened. Bloodwave supreme. Jian Wushuang watched from a distance. In a mighty divine power, Bloodwave supreme was still condensing. Tian Mao shook his head. He has never woken up from Wuxia, and there must be a great chance waiting for him. Jian Wushuang nodded his head. It was already a half-step invincible supreme, before the Bloodwave supreme had become enlightened. It was not difficult to break through the invincible supreme, and it is possible to this day. I am afraid he has already marched towards that more mysterious state. After a moment, all the disciples of the Life Shrine gathered around Jian Wushuang to a slightly open place. He waved under the sky to cast a huge dojo, and then jumped up with the giant axe. Guess who can win? I guess the great axe can win. After all, that is the invincible supreme. Waving a hand can suppress the existence of the ordinary supreme. I guess the Lord of the Warrior's Palace can win. Don't forget, then the Lord of the Warrior's Palace could kill the supreme realm with the ultimate domination. Now the Lord of the Warrior's Palace is half-step invincible. Easy task. It seems like that. The voices of tens of thousands of disciples were noisy, and there was a lot of discussion, and the sound of humming with respect to nature made all the disciples snoring. Only the strong wind hunted on the sky. The sword-like pair of swords, like of heaven, stood in place, and the mighty divine power infiltrated the ends of the hair and spread out the golden mansions. As soon as the supreme axe came into play, he summoned the axe directly and waited. For Jian Wushuang, he flatly does not regard it as an ordinary half-step invincible supreme. Therefore, in a pair of battles, he immediately elevated his divine power to the invincible supremacy. Master of Wushuang Palace, you will offend next. The giant axe said in a deep voice. The axe in his hand was already trembling. Jian Wushuang nodded his head, and his own divine power quietly emerged from the ground. Seeing this, the giant axe waved the giant axe directly, enough to destroy the blazing winds of the star before cutting. However, when dozens of howling winds touched Jian Wushuang's divine power, they melted like ice and snow, and died directly. As soon as the giant axe pupil condensed, he knew that ordinary tricks had no effect on Jian Wushuang. Taking a deep breath, he put the axe in front of him, and all the divine power began to be restrained. As the divine power contracted and restrained, the figure of the giant axe began to transform into 10 ways. 20. 30. There are 30 great axe supremes in total, and each one possesses the complete power of the great axe. This is my invincible realm, the supernatural powers I have learned, the one-on-one battle, and I am supreme in the same state. No one can stop it. The giant axe is extremely tough, and his way is also indomitable. One blows the might of the sky, and no one dares to compete with it. Chapter 4593. There is a splendor of magnificence, and the gate of grandeur suddenly opens. The sword unparalleled in the air, the magical charm. Eyes seem to pierce through the chaos through eternity, locking the great axe supreme. One side, like the Tongtian giant finger that carried the ancient and desolate divine power, protruded from the suddenly opened Tianmen. Magnificent, coming with one finger. It seemed that the axe who wanted to split the dome of chaos hit the giant finger. However, it was just a breath away. Thousands of cracks appeared from the surface of the axe, and the surging divine power poured out. The celestial axe hit the heavenly giant finger of Tianmen, and even without a breath, it broke directly. The treasure phase was destroyed, and the chaos gas field was severely damaged. The supreme axe was directly blasted away from afar, and the breath instantly fainted to the extreme. However, that giant finger only paused for a moment, and then he continued to run towards the great axe. On the ground, Tina Supreme changed his face instantly, urging her figure to ascend directly to the dojo. One palm, the bow started, and the tentacle shot thousands of gods in succession, in order to deter the big horrible finger. Tianwei Huang's divine power emerged from the open heavenly gates, which nourished the Tongtian giant fingers continuously. Thousands of God's mansions released from the invincible supreme realm just left a faint trace on the giant finger, and even failed to stop it. The Tongtian giant finger is still sinking and pressing, and the gushing pressure from the heavenly gate is completely suppressed, even by the figures of the giant axe and the heavenly supreme. The king of Wuxia also saw that something was wrong. As soon as his footsteps were pressed, his body swept into the dojo without hesitation. The black pattern emerged from his entire body, and the vast divine power emanating from the state of extreme supremacy and half-step invincibility emanated. A phantom with naked tops and looming gods appeared from behind Zhu Wang, and then he and the phantom behind him smashed into the finger. Boom! The dojo shattered instantaneously, the shadow behind King Nine Calamity dim instantly, and the blood of God poured out from the corner of his mouth. Sober me up, sword unparalleled. The gums were stained with blood, and the King of Nine Kings roared. The giant axe and the heavenly supreme glanced at each other, and also called their respective treasures, and slammed into the heavenly giant finger together. However, an incredible scene appeared for everyone. 2 invincible supreme treasure phases, and 1 top-level supreme treasure phase, only blocked for a few breaths of time, and then they were all broken. The irresistible Tongtian giant finger continues to run down. Not good. Lon Lon trembled in her heart, ascended to the broken dojo, and released the magical power directly. Then the frost was soaring. 300 primary supreme, more than 10,000 ultimate masters, also at this moment ascended the sky, facing the giant fingers, twisted into a rope, released their own power. Jian Wushuang is very painful. In his barren and empty consciousness, he has long been lost in it. That heavenly gate was created by Jian Wushuang's understanding of the mysterious ancestral art, left by the God of God in his memory. This is the ancestral stroke of transcending the supreme divine realm, and will grow as the user's realm grows. Jian Wushuang used his own half-step invincible state, and used the ancestor technique that should not belong to him. Lost is already the best result. His consciousness was in the hands of no one. Ancestral art, the gate of power world. The sword Wushuang volleys above the sky, and the whole body is covered with red gold gods, like an ancient supreme being. As the voice fell, the giant finger on that side easily crushed the barrier of gods composed of 10,000 people. The horror of life and death under the palm of the virtual suddenly burst into my heart. Thousands of disciples are pale and unavoidable. The King of Nine Kings showed a bitter face, watching the sword Wushuang with his eyes closed in the sky. He slowly closed his eyes and then suddenly said, "You guys, you must give me a good life." Suddenly, as the wind blows the sea, the spring water melts. A heavy finger hovering over everyone's head. "Hurry, leave soon." Jian Wushuang's strenuous voice sounded openly. Looking intently, I saw Jian Wushuang hanging in the heavens and the earth. The pupils were clear, and his arms dragged to keep the blow. The king of Wuxia immediately responded, and the vigorous and powerful force came out, struggling to promote tens of thousands of disciples. After everyone was out of danger, the massive giant finger was down. The world is slightly discolored. Rumble. I don't know how long it took. The king of Wuxia sounded a little bit of complaint. "You guy, let that blow go, aren't you dead?" Sitting in front of a giant pit, the sword was awkward and rubbed his nose with embarrassment. "I was just trying to hit this shot. I didn't expect that the power was so scary that I fell into it." Zhijiawang shook his head helplessly. "I have taken note of this matter. You will need to hold the zombie's head in the future to offset this. It was just a terrible blow," the Great Axe Supreme feared. "If it is on the battlefield, I am afraid that no one invincible supreme can take that one." Jian Wushuang replied, "That type of non-present day I can control. If I had not been awakened by the 9 calamities just now, the consequences would be unthinkable, so I would not use it on the battlefield." Noble Supreme nodded, and then said, "Master of the Wushuang Palace, shall we continue to realize in this place of tragedy? Or will we go to the divine universe and fight the virtual universe?" Jian Wushuang thought for a moment, then said, "You will continue to work in this sad place, and I will go alone to the virtual universe to pick up those who should return but cannot return." Guided those who should have returned but could not return? The axe murmured supremely, and his body shook immediately. Is the Lord of Daoyan Palace still alive? Tina shook likewise. Jian Wushuang did not deny or confirm. I had seen the Lord of the Tao Yin Palace in that godland long ago, when I was in the Void Universe. It was also at that time, and the Lord of the Tao Yin Palace gave it to me. And he passed me all his sentiments of enlightenment, and then the spirit disappeared. Because Bingyu Supreme fought against me at that time, I had no time to probe the traces of the life of the Lord of the Daoyan Palace. Until now I want to come. The Lord of the Daoyan Palace must still sleep there. Jian Wushuang sincerely said, I will go to this place regardless of whether the main body of the Tao Yin Palace is dead or not, because he belongs to the divine universe, and even if he died, I will bring him back. The Great Axe Supreme immediately kneeled in front of the sword without double-sided with the Heavenly Supreme, and the old tears crisscrossed. Xia Wushuang Palace Lord, Giant Axe/Tina, obey the Palace Lord's orders until death. You don't have to be polite. The imaginary universe owes us, and I will ask for it one by one. Jian Wushuang held up the two of them, his eyes fixed. Jiu Jie came to the front of Jianwu, and Shen said, This is a dangerous trip. I will go to the virtual universe with you, so I can take care of each other. Remember the first domain name in this book. Mobile website reading URL. Chapter 4594. Jian Wushuang groaned slightly, shook his head and said, No, the goals of the two are too big, and they may be discovered at any time. And I have a secret method that can completely disguise the vanity of the virtual universe. It doesn't matter if I want to come and go. The King of Nine Calamities didn't demand it either, and he didn't speak after saying a caution on the road. Jian Wushuang nodded his head, and then gave a detailed explanation to the giant axe and the Heavenly Supreme Supremacy, then began to leave the tragedy. Fu Jun, I can't help you anymore, so be careful all the way. There was a bitterness in Lung Rushwang's eyes. You are by my side the greatest help to me. Without your years, it is true loneliness. Looking at this woman who has been resentment without regrets, and has been with her so far, Jian Wushuang gently hugged. She then turned into a touch of Changhong, and went to the exit of the sad land. The person with such a pure Taoist heart, the future of the master of the Wushuang Palace, I can't see through it even more. The giant axe looked at the sky where Jian Wushuang disappeared and murmured, Stepping back into that dark and lonely passage, all the sorrowful sorrows disappeared, and even the grievances left by ancient times disappeared. Jian Wushuang began to vaguely feel that this side of the burial land seemed to be slowly dissipating in some form. What seemed to be an endless channel, but now it is at the end of a sword, thought of Jian Wushuang. Stepping out of the quiet channel, the starless starfield appeared in front of Jian Wushuang. The starry sky 10,000 years later is no different from the starry sky 10,000 years ago. The only difference may be the residual force in the galaxy, the slightest force that is about to completely dissipate. Anyone from the Void Universe has been here. Jian Wushuang frowned slightly, looking at another emperor's site. The ruins that exuded a dark mist and separated the cosmic starry sky, and existed independently, are as unchanged as before. Thinking for a moment, Jian Wushuang waved out of the cosmic boat and drove away towards the distance. A few months later, in front of the fissure leading to the Void Universe, a young ranger, wearing a wide black robe with a handsome and clear face, stopped in front of the 23rd fissure. Since the two sides of the universe are still in the battle of catastrophe, from time to time, all parties step out of the cracks and head for the magical universe that has already opened its doors. At the same time, the various cracks leading to the divine universe have also strengthened the patrol guarding the virtual respect. Today, these 23 cracks have arranged nearly 15 four-marked virtual respects to be stationed, and at the same time, the terror that belongs to 6 marked virtual respects is surging in the dark. The young ranger dressed as a young man is naturally a sword unparalleled. His eyes were like a deep spring, and he came to the crack in one step. Who is it? A black mist emerged, and the patrol team consisting of 3 four-marked virtual respects stood in front of Jian Wushuang, showing vigilance. Master's allies. Jian Wushuang chuckled, raising his hand to reveal a ray of weakness. Which star field are you from? And where did you respond to the call of the false god? One of the captains foremarked vanity, still very vigilant. Jian Wushuang calmly said, Liang Star Field. Yu Huazong responded to the call of the virtual, and ran to the magical universe 13,000 years ago. Then why are you returning alone now? Sikhen Shizuan asked. Shouldn't you be playing for Lord Shishan on the battlefield? Jian Wushuang didn't speak, and when he raised his hand, he took 3 black boxes from Qingquan Ring and gave them to the captain. A strange scent of medicine emerged from the box, and the 4 marks of imagination, that were about to become angry, saw the box of the robe immediately. I coughed a few times, and the 4-marked Su Zun exclaimed, I miss my homeland. Let's go home soon. The provincial family is worried. Sword Wuxia promised, raised his foot, and prepared to step into the crack. The next moment, a repressive voice resounded from the dark. Slow. Suddenly, a faint sense of crisis came to my heart. Still was it found? Jian Wushuang stopped, and immediately in the deep crack in front of him, stirred a powerful force. With the emergence of power, there was also a middle-aged man, wearing a purple Jinhua suit. A few people who were still ecstatic were kneeling down on the ground after seeing the comer. See, I've seen the 9-fingered emperor. The middle-aged man who attacked Zijinhua's clothes stayed on Jian Wushuang, and then he shouted, You are not a person in my virtual universe. Are you trying to enter because of cooperation? Is it 6 marks? Jian Wushuang's eyes narrowed slightly, his black robe screamed. The successor of the patrol team also noticed that something was wrong, even when they came around. The 9-fingered emperor smiled coldly. It does not seem to be a person in the void universe. Do you volunteer your head or let me unscrew it? The skull is here. You can take it down and take it straight. Jian Wushuang said indifferently. Bold. The 9-fingered emperor burst into a drink, and the supreme virginity followed. Jian Wuxiao moved lightly and pushed away with one palm. The seemingly bland hand is the virtual force howling that directly shattered. The 9-fingered emperor's eyes were fixed. This guy who looked at only 2 marks at most could break his own power by waving his hand? With this in mind, the 9-fingered emperor no longer entrusted himself, and an emperor sword containing a mighty power appeared in his hands out of thin air, and then strove to cut it down. Contains the full blow of 6 marks, and where the swordsman passes, it breaks the starry sky. Carved insect tricks. Jian Wushuang disdain sneered, and then rolled away with one finger. The supreme vigor arrived at Jian Mang. The unstoppable Jian Mang turned from brilliance to dim, and disappeared instantly. Jian Wushuang's one-pointed momentum continued unabated. Through the protection of virtual force, he pressed directly on the right shoulder of the 9-finger emperor holding the sword. Invisible energy burst out through the body, tearing his entire right arm with him. Holding the emperor sword's right arm, he fell into the starless sky, and was torn by the howling wind. With just one blow of power, he easily wiped out the 6-marked virtual honor, which made the 3 4-marked virtual honors originally intended to sneak attack, and stayed away from the battle circle without any trace. The 9-fingered emperor with a broken arm looked at Jian Wushuang incredibly. How could a cricket ant destroy a giant elephant? Taking on the important things, www.novel. Jian Wushuang's speed and speed. The palm of your hand is raised like a god's judgment. At that moment, supreme divine power turned into a huge palm print, and took a picture of it towards the 9-fingered emperor. The horror between life and death made the 9-fingered emperor extremely cold. He even had no time to turn around, and was crushed into the meat by the giant palm print. The great emperor of a kingdom of God died in the hands of Jian Wushuang, killing the 6-mark void in a half-step invincible state of supremacy. I am afraid that it has transcended all the cognitions of the 2 universes. With a thump, the 3 4-marked virtual honors knelt neatly in front of Jian Wushuang. Adhering to the principle of sending Buddha to the West, after raising his hand to kill, Jian Wushuang strides into this virtual universe. Wonderful Bookhouse. Chapter 4595. In total, There were 17 virtual honors in the 23rd Crack Patrol. In addition to the most powerful Nine-Finger Emperor, 7 5-mark virtual honors were hidden in the depths. In order to prevent the news that he entered the virtual universe from revealing too quickly, Jian Wushuang simply blocked the entire area with magical powers and killed the remaining virtual respects one by one. After doing all this quickly, Jian Wushuang's figure turned into a streamer, and he swept away toward the path that he once remembered. There are hundreds of millions of star fields in the virtual universe, and the larger star field holy places are already in a wartime state, and they send trace-level virtual respects to the divine universe every last time. To this end, the Holocaust was already in its possession. Because of that empty luck, my entire divine power universe has fallen. Jian Wushuang reflected a large area of stars in his star-like eyes. How do you eat it? I will let you repay it. In a starry and solitary star field, the young swordsman dressed in swordsman stopped here. In just 10,000 years, this place sealed with the Lord of the Taoist Palace was desolate and desolate until it was destroyed. The 99 divine restraints have long since been in vain, and any 4-marked virtual lord can be broken by force. The more so, the more panicked Jian Wushuang was. He didn't want to believe that the Supreme Master would die, and even if he urged the divine power to enter the land of God, the 99 divine bands automatically dissipated, opening a way for the sword unparalleled. One step into the land of the gods, the sword unparalleled. I saw that the original mounds were dying, and the ruined ruins disappeared, and replaced by the living green lotus that has spread to the sky. Every inch of land was full of Qinglian, swaying in the wind. Qinglian, who was so full of eyes, had nothing else. Brother Daoyan, Brother Daoyan. Jian Wushuang walked longitudinally. His voice sounded throughout the world. Qinglian contains the charm, and is transformed by Taoyan Supreme. Jian Wushuang did not know if Daoyan Supreme had fallen, but could only follow his breath to find his whereabouts. For 15 days, he tirelessly searched Daikyu and Dao, but found no trace. Is Brother Daoyan really dead? A glance of gloom glanced from his eyes. Master Wushuang, don't come to Wui. Like the spring breeze and summer cicada, the pleasant warm sound could not be heard. Jian Wushuang hid a spirit, and hurriedly looked behind him. I saw in the thousands of green lotuses, Daoyan who hit the blue shirt looked at him with a smile. Brother Daoyan. Jian Wushuang leapt up and ran to Daoyan in excitement. At this moment, Daoyan had recovered slightly from the last time he met, and his withered face began to recover, a little more clear. Wushuang, why should you come here in danger? Daoyan said, I feel that the breath left by that existence is already very weak. Has our universe won? Jian Wushuang's eyes dimmed, and everything that happened after that was told to Tao Yen. Zhou God, his whereabouts are still unknown. Jian Wushuang said here, no matter how difficult it is. Dao Yin shook his figure, looked at the eternally dim sky and cried, Tian Tao, how can Tian Tao be so? As long as I'm still alive, I will surely slaughter all the evil enemies. Jian Wushuang hated. Change my life. I Dao Yin, sworn to protect the magical universe. Dao Yin wept. But now, I'm back to my original state, unable to return to heaven. Jian Wushuang stepped forward and said, Brother, no matter what, now you leave here with me. I will take you to a great land of good fortune, and I will certainly be able to return to the peak when I realize that for more than 10 years. Hope rose in Dao Yan's eyes, and then fainted again. Stupid master, I can't leave anymore. Once I leave, the breath left by the virtual will inevitably furiously fight back, and am afraid that even you can't leave. Jian Wushuang heard the words and said firmly, Brother, I am not the same as me before. As long as it is not his deity, even if the semi-ancestors come, I will be able to protect Brother Wuyo. After the words were finished, without waiting for Dao Yin to speak, Jian Wushuang waved his hand directly with his divine power to pick up the natal Qinglian under Dao Yin. Suddenly, the entire land of the gods collapsed. Countless green lotuses shrank as the river and the sea fell, and the diffused spiritual power belonged to the origin of the green lotus. At the same time, a majestic sound resounded from ancient times, as if through a flood. Dao Yin, why do you want to step out of the ban? Don't you really fear that the spirits will die out? The sky is collapsing, endless imaginary forces falling, and the black flame is so thick that it condenses like a substance, covering the sky, and a chaotic giant face looks at the earth. As the sun of the sun shines on the ground, the trueness of the sword unparalleled, this giant face is the true shadow of the virtual universe. Dao Yin gave a cold hum, and didn't look at him. Instead, he passed on the voice sword Wushuang. Master Wushuang, I will fight with him with my soul. Later, you can quickly escape and save the fire for my magical universe. Hearing the words, Jian Wushuang shook his head gently and said, Brother Dao Yin, I have told you now that I am not what I was before. Even if his true shadow comes, I have no fear at all. When the words were over, the majestic and mighty divine power suddenly surged, like the rising wind hitting the sky. The two very different forces fought together, creating the most magnificent huamang. The divine power belonging to the sword unparalleled, under the pressure of that virtual force, can even be equal to it. And there is a faint upward trend. Ha! The giant face asked in wonder above the sky. These ants can exude such a breath. No wonder you dare to get out of the thunder pool. That being the case, then you all stay here today. Hong Zhong de Lu's giant voice fell, and the endless imagination suddenly condensed into a large palm covering the sky, and he was deeply suppressed. The sword Wushuang was not afraid, and with a cold hum, his palms exuded the bright red gold gods. Ancestral art, the gate of power world, the majestic Tianmen breaks through the darkness and power, is located on the sky, and amidst endless magnificence the treasure light flows, the giant sun shines, and one side of the giant finger emerges from the heavenly gate, with the magnificent divine power, right on that big palm. Boom! The two collided with each other, and the most extreme destructive force erupted in the extremely dark virtual force, and the magnificent might. The colorful impact ripples directly destroyed the broken sky. The earth burst out into the gully, and the turbid gas of the abyss spewed out. At the moment of the collision, Jian Wu's ears, nose and nose were all bleeding, the upper bodice black robe was torn directly, and the whole body was dimmed. Covering the palm of the sky, it was in a stalemate with the giant fingers of the heavenly gate, and the divine power and imaginary power completely shattered the land of God. The giant face that appeared above the sky was no longer expressionless, and under the finger of the door that day, he faded just as quickly. Although he is the true shadow of the virtual God, at this moment, this is the home of Jian Wushuang. Chapter 4596. The endless magnificence rises, and the face is furious. How dare you? Jian Wushuang did not speak. His eyes flashed with golden mansions. I used to desperately exhaust my body, just to escape your palm. Now I can resist you with just one style. What can you do to me? Huang Huang's mighty power emerged from the heavenly gate, dissipating the dark endless power. Even if this seed is just a true shadow, it will naturally wipe out soul and others. When the sky suddenly collapsed, the giant face opened his mouth and swallowed the gate with one finger, and then ran towards the earth. The power heaven gate was dim for an instant. An ant's potential can beat the world? Jian Wushuang mouth Qinshan blood. The whole body of God pattern began to escape. A gentle divine power drew around Jian Wushuang's waist and pulled him to Dao Yin Supreme. Master Wushuang, I am very grateful to you that you can come and save me back, and all these causes and effects will finally come to me. Dao Yin smiled, and then the pure divine power in his hand pushed Jian Wushuang far away. Later, Dao Yin Supreme transformed himself into a green lotus, and the vast blue rime rushed into Xiaoyu. Jian Wu's eyes were split. Brother Dao Yin, countless tragedies are ultimately caused by insufficient strength. Right now this tragedy is going to happen again. The original faint gold pattern suddenly shattered, turning into a scared dragon to practice the sky, centered on the sword Wushuang. The Huang power pierced Xiaoyu and injected directly into the heavenly gate of the power realm. The magnificent red brilliance shines like 100 rounds of big sun. That is still just a faint outline of the gate of the sky, which is used by the sword Wushuang at no cost. Huang Wei, who has penetrated all things, has already surpassed the coercion of the previous giant fingers. Nearly 1,000 handles of magic soldiers emerged from the illusion, linked to each other, showing the tendency to cover the seal, and lowered endless power. The giant virtual face that almost fell to the ground stopped abruptly, and it was even harder to get half an inch. The virtual images of the magical soldiers are intertwined with each other, as if a divine punishment is coming. The false giant face finally stopped before Dao Yan's life, and then began to appear dense cracks. 2 rounds of star-like pupils looked at Jian Wushuang, and after breaking the last sentence, they broke apart. We will meet again. Everything is back to earth, and the true shadow of the virtual is broken. The heavenly gate that hovered over the broken Xiaoyu slowly dissipated, and Jian Wushuang, like a dying swimming fish, sat on the ground kneeling, breathing heavily. Qing Yin converged and Dao Yan, who had hit the blue shirt, held up his sword unparalleled. Master Wushuang, Dao Yan is here to thank you. Dao Yan supremely arched. The gentle divine power nourishes Jian Wushuang's dried-up meridians and makes him recover quickly. Brother Dao Yan, Jian Wushuang stood upright solemnly. Don't thank me, this is what I should and must do. Even if I die, I will save you. Dao Yan no longer spoke, nodding with red eyes. In this battle with the True of Shadow, the land of the gods was completely destroyed, and even the entire star field was cracked and collapsed, and hundreds of chaos ages were difficult to repair. Because the movement is too big, there are already trace-level virtual men starting to rush here. After Jian Wushuang waved and set up an enchantment, he and Dao Yan left the place in a cosmic boat. His next destination is the refining of the sect of sect. The Chaos Han Supreme, who is dormant for tens of thousands of times, is also a mountain mover in the divine universe. After traveling through the various star fields for more than a few months, they finally stopped in a very familiar star field. That's the realm of refining Shenzong. Retransfiguration. Jian Wushuang and Dao Yan went straight to refining Shenzong. Although today's Jian Wushuang is a half-step invincible supreme, a supernatural power can already easily kill the invincible supreme. It is the easiest thing to hide the breath. Although Dao Yan cannot convert divine power into virtual power, but her charm has already reached its peak. It is naturally not difficult to avoid being discovered by ordinary virtual respect. A gust of wind fell into the Lian Shenzong, awakened the 2 disciples at the door, muttered a few words to each other, and fell asleep again. In a bright hall that is different from the eerie alchemy, Elder Banshan has been sitting in the middle of the hall for more than tens of thousands of years. From the departure of Jin Shuang's sword, he has been enlightened to this day. The incense burner trembled, and the Elder Banshan, who had been silent for tens of thousands of years, slowly opened his eyes. In his heart, an inexplicable induction rose. The temple door, which had not been opened for a long time, was gently pushed open. A ranger's figure appeared in his eyes. Behind that ranger, a rueful blue shirt followed. The young ranger slowly pulled down his hood and said with a smile, "Moving the elders, I can go home." Like a thunder strike, all sounds went away in the ears of the elders who moved the mountain. At this moment, he had only one figure in his eyes that he hadn't seen before. "Little guy, it's been a long time." Qing Yan's face showed a smile of vicissitudes. Tao Yan's eyes were reddish. "The lord of the palace, the lord of the palace." The elder who moved the mountain got up and went straight to Dao Yan, and then kneeled heavily, crying in sorrow. The past is turbulent, the old man reappears, down to the trafficker, and to the supreme of the gods. I am afraid that it is difficult to resist the past misery. These 2 old friends, who have been dating for a long time, would never have thought that they would be so poor in this life that they would meet again. When they first met, the 2 heroes were dark-haired and proud of the immortality of the divine universe. "It's been a long time since I met again after suffering." With the emotion of Jian Wushuang in his heart, he withdrew from the hall and let the 2 recount the past. "Master of Daoyan Palace, you are suffering." Elder Qianshan wiped his eyes and wept silently. Dao Yan wiped her tears. 100 million years apart, I didn't expect that we could see each other again. I only hope that we won't be separated again this time. Besides death in this life, I will not be half a step away from the palace master. Dao Yan no longer spoke, but clenched his palm firmly. The two old friends said nothing at all. Sun moving star obliquely, the door of the temple was slowly opened, and the mountain mover kneeled down on one knee and solemnly said, "The mountain mover sees the master of the Wushuang palace. From now on, let the master of the Wushuang palace dispatch. Never die." Jian Wushuang hurriedly lifted the mountain mover. "Let's leave here first, and wait to return to the divine universe before we make a plan." Dao Yin and the Taoist promised to leave the refining Shenzong with Jian Wushuang. Almost endless years spent in this virtual universe, as if the years of the cage had finally broken. Even if they died in the battlefield outside the territory, it is also the best destination. Jian Wushuang sat on the railing of the cosmic boat and looked at it with extreme eyes. Tao Yin Supreme and Mountaineer Taoist stood on the deck and finally closed the star field of this virtual universe to his eyes. In at least a year, the spacecraft can leave the virtual universe, and Jian Wushuang will take advantage of the time when the virtual is sealed to conduct a comprehensive counterattack. Diaphragm, what kind of existence does this group of guys have? Jian Wushuang secretly meditated. Chapter 4597. Sun Shen has been sealed for more than 10,000 years, and there is no breath of advent at all. Taking advantage of this time, there are Daoyan Supremes who have gone through the last cataclysmic battle, together with the Starry Sword sect, and the invincible Supremes of the Dragon and Phoenix Unicorns, should be able to barely hold the number of the 6 marked voids in the universe. Jian Wushuang is confident that although he cannot kill the zombie, he should have no problem holding it. In this way, the high-end battlefield is flat. The ordinary battlefield is also the home of the magical universe, and the hard drag can also drag the ordinary vanity of the virtual universe to death. As long as the living force of the virtual universe is slaughtered as much as possible, and even if the virtual returns again, it will be an extremely long time to launch the next catastrophe. In the calculation of Jian Wushuang, only the extremely mysterious phagocytosis is a great variable. He had personally experienced the horror of the phagocytosis, and if it was not for Gava's shot, he would have feared that he had fallen into the hands of the phagocytosis. What kind of organization and what purpose do they have? Are their needs consistent with what the virtual universe needs? Jian Wushuang felt more and more headaches the more he thought about it. Wushuang Gongzhu, is there anything upset? Can you say one or two with Dao Yan? Dao Yan Supreme asked. Jian Wushuang groaned for a moment, then jumped up to the deck and asked, "Elder Dao Yan, do you know that there is an existence in this virtual universe called the phagocytosis?" Dao Yan's eyes were fixed. Did this attack on the catastrophe? Jian Wushuang nodded and said, "It has already been shot, and judging from the shot, I am afraid that the strength is not weaker than the half-ancestor." Half-ancestor, have they grown to such a point? Dao Yan was bitter in his eyes. I knew the organization before the last catastrophe. In fact, in the first place, the phagocytosis first appeared in our divine universe. At that time, I had an argument with the emperor phasing organized by them. Recalling the memories from a long time ago, Dao Yan said slowly. However, the discourse ended in disappointment. After that, they left the divine universe and became the divine universe from then on. Nightmare. Does that Elder Yin know what they really need? Is it really the luck of our magical universe? Jian Wushuang asked urgently. Dao Yin shook his head supremely, and then said, he and his phagocytic organization seem to be a very contradictory existence. In that doctrine, the Emperor promised to help our divine universe retreat from the enemy, but he did not ask for any favorable conditions. There is only one requirement, which is to completely kill the virtual universe without leaving a soul. I didn't agree with his request, even if the virtual universe invades first, but to kill every soul, I can't ask myself. He left the divine universe and joined the virtual universe. If why he and his phagocytosis helped the virtual universe, I am afraid that it is because the virtual has agreed to his request. Jian Wushuang heard the words and shuddered. The bite-eating emperor of the organization was like a special existence independent of the two universes, and their purpose was never to compete for luck. Instead, the universe to be defeated is completely reduced to a dead domain, leaving no living beings. The two universes seem to have become playthings in his hands, until the dead. Silent for a long while, Jian Wushuang suddenly said, Elder Tao Yan, if that is the case, I should make a deal with them for the magical universe. You want to? Dao Yan didn't go on and frowned. Master of the Wushuang Palace, aren't all the eternal universe of the poor, all creatures are just pieces of chess? Jian Wushuang shook his head and said for a while, One day, I will find Master and ask the last question. Only the cosmic boat shuttled in the bleak ancient star field. Half a year later, because the land is a bustling starry country, it is no longer possible to use the cosmic boat to shuttle with great fanfare. Jian Wushuang and Dao Yan, the three men who moved the mountain and dressed as a ranger, to save unnecessary trouble. But Rao is so. The journey is also extremely dangerous, just killing the vanity under the sword without hands. No less than 20. At most there is more than March. We can leave here and reach the divine universe. Jian Wushuang said after replenishing from one of the star domain virtual kingdoms. Although Daoyan Supreme and the Taoist looked pale, their irresistible excitement in their eyes exposed their hearts. Too long to leave home. So long that most of the kingdom of God has become dust, not to mention they have fetters. In order to avoid too much unnecessary trouble, the three rangers tried to make a roundabout journey from the lonely starfield. Perhaps the opening of the 23rd crack opened the vigilance of the virtual universe, and the vanity that was rarely seen in the world also appeared in various star fields. On the countdown to leaving the virtual universe, on the sky of a more prosperous starfield virtual kingdom, Jian Wushuang noticed a faint yet familiar atmosphere. That breath is the divine power that belongs only to the divine universe. Daoyan Supreme and the Taoist also noticed that divine power, and then looked at Jian Wushuang. In view of the fact that the two sides of the universe are still in a hot war, Jian Wushuang thought for a moment, then decided to let the two hide in the virtual state below him, and went to investigate the situation alone. After saying a word of caution to each other, the swordless twins swept across the starry sky. I saw that in the endless starry sky, 4 or 5 spaceships of the imaginary universe broke through, and that faint divine power came from the first ship. The mind turned, and the sword was shaped like a rainbow, and he boarded the deck of the first spacecraft in one breath. Who? Whispered. A four-marked Suzun stepped out from the bottom of the cabin, looking at Jian Wushuang with vigilance. The road is far away, and I want to ask an adult to give a bowl of water to drink. Jian Wushuang said. While he was walking in front of one foot, he grabbed it in the air. Immediately the four-marked virtual respect fell to the ground, and fell to his knees, unable to speak, his face in pain. Tell me, are you catching people from the divine universe? Jian Wushuang frowned coldly. The horror between life and death made this four-marked virtual respect speak like a pea, without any concealment. Yes, I caught one. But that was a virgin who didn't have much strength. My grown-up looked at her raw lips and teeth, and was ready to take a blow. The words did not fall. Jian Wushuang directly crushed him into meat, and the spirits were destroyed. Immediately, he stepped back a few steps and looked coldly down the deck. A force that was more pure and overbearing than the invincible Supreme escaped. How dare you dare to come here wantonly? Ba Ju's majestic imagination tore the entire deck, causing purple and blue gods to thunder. Chapter 4598. An old man with a height of several feet and a naked upper body appeared in Jian Wushuang's eyes. Jian Wushuang's pupils were frozen, his white hair was burly, and he had 2 thunderballs in his left hand. It is the old man who has been seen in the Refining God sect, and in the battlefields outside the region. He is an ambassador for the virtual god, and he has a virtual force to reach the peak. And he is no different from the white ancestor of the hegemon. If it was the previous sword Wushuang, how far has it been to meet him? But now, there is no fear. Breathing a sigh of sigh, Jian Wushuang stretched down his hood, revealing a cheek that could not be more familiar with righteousness. Sure enough, he fixed his gaze and questioned, It's you, Wushuang, isn't it, Swordsman? Aren't you running away? How dare you come here alone? I'm here to collect the debt. Jian Wushuang coldly. Blood debt. Blood debt. The Shushan made a sigh of right, and then smiled. Only you, the scumbags? I originally wanted to take your head and give it to Lord Shushan as a night pot. I never thought you would die. This province is also hard to find. Ignoring the insults of the righteous ambassador, he reached out his hand and pulled out the tailored sword hanging from his waist. Su Shenright flashed his eyes. Very good, very good. Just by the way, I cut your head with this magic sword without delay. 10 breaths. Jian Wushuang said coldly. Su Shenyu fixed his gaze, and the monstrous imagination blocked all escape paths in an instant. At the same time, the right fist smashed out, and the fist of the extinguishable star was smashed into the sword without double-sided doors. In a star-cutting style, a more powerful Jianmong slammed into the fist boxer, which easily offset his offensive. Su Shenright fixed his gaze. This character, who was almost equal to the ants in his eyes, actually lightly resolved his offensive. Anxious in his heart, he directly threw the 2 huge thunder in his left hand towards Jian Wushuang. The thunder ball rose against the storm, and there was a huge amount of lightning on it. Once it was hit by anyone, even if it was invincible, it had to fall on the spot. Without evasion, Jian Wushuang stood upright like that. Only the Taro Excalibur in his hand was leading forward. 2 thunderballs and thunder came, but they were still at the moment when they hit the sword tip of Tai Luo's Excalibur. Then the sword stabbed without a double arm, and the 2 thunderballs came back in the same way, and the potential was even heavier. Su Shenright fixed his gaze, subconsciously reached out to catch it, and the blood mist burst from his palm. With a moan, he spread his palms and saw that between the thunder bones, the 2 thunderballs had no idea when they broke into dregs. Since the first battle of the Holocaust, he has long forgotten what it is like to be injured. Now not only his palms are broken, but also 2 thunderballs, which are regarded as his own life, are also damaged, and the shame make this false make an instant violent. Sword unparalleled. This seat wants you to die without a burial place. The fierce imagination centered on the ambassador of the imaginary god, and swept across the entire star domain in an instant. Countless stars broke apart. Even the kingdom underneath was under his power, and instantly nirvana. In competent fury, Jian Wushuang raised an eyebrow and smiled, and the Tai Luo divine sword returned to the sheath, so he rushed directly against the violent force. Su Yu, the height of Zhang Yu, made a punch with a punch in front of him, and at the same time opened his mouth to spit out a virtual inflammation, which destroyed the space easily. The black robe surging, Jian Wushuang's fancy palm forward, broke through the thick black flame directly, and struck the black fist. A fist the size of a water tank smashed into the palm without any suspense. The imaginary meat emulsion did not appear, and the proud smile even hung on the face of Shushan Yushir. The ghost-like figure quietly appeared in front of him, and a red-gold pattern flashed at the same time. With a soft swipe, a huge head naturally shifted. Jian Wushuang held the white hair in one hand, and lifted the entire head into the hand with Shushan right. Boom! The headless body shuddered, and then slammed into the bilge. My body, what about the body? Su Shenyu exclaimed, terrified. He wanted to escape, but found that he had only such a head. With that big head in front of himself, Jian Wushuang said quietly, Now still want to use my head as a night pot? No, don't want to. The extreme horror of death at any time made the immortal false in front of you. Completely scared. Sword Wushuang. Master Wushuang. You can let me go. I promise not to investigate everything that happened today, and I will certainly intercede for you in the presence of Lord Shushan, when the magical universe will leave you alone. There was a flash of disgust in his eyes, and Jian Wushuang threw his head directly into the star field. Without waiting for him to be ecstatic, a beam of Shinmong came and killed him. The virtual made the right move, so he disappeared. Walking towards the bilge, he saw a very familiar figure in a huge cage. The light-skinned clothes of this white shirt were extremely filthy at the moment, and the bun that had been turned into a playful look was scattered to cover most of the cheeks. Jian Wushuang's strong endured a heart that was about to explode, and he removed the cage mouth in one shot. Little boy. Sword squatting softly. After several calls, the startled numb little figure looked up timidly, and a pair of deer-like eyes looked at Jian Wushuang. After a while, tears poured, and a sorrowful cry rang from the young boy's childish mouth. "It's you, smelly chest basket." The whimper sounded, and the childish fluttered into Jian Wushuang's arms and wept. Sorrow rushed to his heart. This worrisome little boy who seemed to gather the spiritual power of heaven and earth as a whole. At this moment's miserable situation, he thought of the ancestor Feng Tian, who saved the fire of God's universe with his body. His eyes were red, and Jian Wushuang murmured, I'm late. Smelly chest basket, where is my master? Please tell me my master. I want my master to take revenge on me and kill the bad guys who bully me. The naive in her arms let out all the terror and pain in her heart. Since she was a child, she has been serving beside her ancestor Feng Tian. She is not the only person in the world. Jian Wushuang is the only person she has talked to after her ancestor, and naturally regards her as the closest person. Smelly chest basket. The young child stood up and looked at Jian Wushuang with a pair of red eyes, sobbing intermittently. You tell me where my master has gone, and I want to miss him very much. Should he not be childish? If he is too naive, he won't hit him. He is scared and doesn't want to leave him for a long time. The cramps in her heart made Jian Wushuang unable to open her to tell her the truth. He can only say sadly, childish, rest assured with me from now on, no one will bully you. Chapter 4599. Smelly chest basket. I just want to hear the truth. A large teardrop slid down the naive cheek. My master, is he alive or dead? Taking a deep breath, Jian Wushuang no longer looked at the naive and trembled, dead. Immature childishly, his eyes quickly faded, his body flickered a little, and he planted himself in Jian Wushuang's arms and passed out. Looking at this once carefree little fairy boy, now he looks like this, sadness recedes from his eyes, and he goes to the starry sky. Sword Wushuang lifted his naivety, slowly rising to the starry sky. The remaining 4 spacecraft, a total of 30 vain honors, surrounded them in a trend of encirclement. Master of Wushuang Palace, hurry up! Dao Yan and the movers of Taoism swept through the statures, looking at the more than 30 vanity eyes. If it is in the divine universe, these vanities do not even have 5 marks. You can just wave the mountain and kill them. But now in the virtual universe, the Taoist can use up to 6 or 7 layers of magical powers, and the Taoist Supreme has already been weak, and he has no time to replenish his divine power. Even the Destiny Qinglian will suffer irreversible damage. Confronting these 30 virtual honors, there is no chance of winning. However, Jian Wushuang did not show any sign of leaving, and the golden gods in his eyes surged against the wind. Just repay it with your messy blood. The voice without any emotional color, just like God's punishment came to the world, only one sentence, and they ended their ending. This more prosperous star field quietly formed a layer of misty frost, and all the countless creatures under a trace of vanity have unknowingly become an ice sculpture. The 30 vain princes in this cold age felt strange changes at the same time. What's going on? I feel my bone marrow is freezing, and the weak forces are condensing. I said, right, the adults died in the kid's hands. How could we kill him with many people? Run away. After the noisy whispers, the 30 virtual princes were scattered as birds and beasts, and turned into black light, and scattered in various directions. Then, each vanity failed to escape, and the moment they turned into an ice sculpture. The 4 seasons in the Pterrasword canon is no longer the same today. With a half-step invincible supremacy, you can kill all realms, let alone this group of virtual lords, who are at most not more than 4 marks. Instantly, the frozen country of the star domain was so understatement that Jian Wushuang was like the of gods in charge of punishment. These star domains and vanity that were stained with innocent blood were frozen. Feeling the coolness coming from the whole body, the man moving the mountain could not help but tighten his tight shirt. He began to discover that Jian Wushuang's unwitting growth had surpassed his cognition. Dao Yin Supreme was not looking at those frozen esteemed princes, stepped forward, and looked at the thin figure in Jian Wushuang's arms, unable to bear the pain in his heart. Is this the young girl under Feng Tianzuo? Tao Yin asked with a tremor. Swordless eyes sink like water and nodded. The son of the deceased has suffered so much. You really deserve to die in the virtual universe. Dao Yin wept, her face tingling with anger because of her anger. I really want to crush them one by one now. The man on the mountain road looked iron blue, and punched several ice sculptures with ice on his side. In the end, the void universe owes us, and it must be repaid with blood, Jian Wushuang said in a deep voice, and the last trace of pity in his heart was quickly disappearing. In the next period of time, the emergence of a powerful young ranger, wearing a large black robe, scared more than half of the star universe of the virtual universe. That nightmare figure appeared in one of the star fields, but in half a day, the entire star field vanished as many nirvana disappeared, down to the trafficker's death, and up to 6 marks of virtual respect, no one soul survived. A vast force of imagination, as if through the sky, even the strong ancestors of the 6 ancestors in their respective worlds. It is difficult to escape the end of the dead. No one side knows what the mysterious ranger looks like, because anyone who has seen that person has long disappeared with the stars. There was a rumor that the mysterious ranger was sent by the divine universe to revenge, but it was quickly rejected, and there was a sacred rumor that the man was an apostle under the virtual seat, and broke through the extreme situation, and lost his mind, and then began mass slaughter. When a 5-party star field is fully prepared, please call on each of the ancestors to launch a sack attack, but after the failure, the entire universe of the extreme north is silent. A total of 5 ancestors who were at the top of the 6-marked impoverished state, plus 110 venerated deities, disappeared strangely overnight. The 5 bustling star fields are like wiping away from under the stars, leaving only the black void. No one knows what happened that night. They can only silently pray for the person who exists like a nightmare and leave soon. In a lonely starfield, a cosmic boat containing only 5 people, like Jinghong, jumped forward at a very fast speed. Jian Wushuang sat on the railing of the bow of the ship, and Changfeng slammed the hunting of the black robe on his body, inadvertently showing the spirit of killing, making him walk out of the blood of the dead mountain. In January, in the 27 star fields, kill 8 of the 6 marks and 23 of the 5 marks. The rest of the realm is uncountable. One after another the ordinary numbers emerged from his mind, and soon disappeared. Today's sword is unparalleled, and the destructiveness of him alone is extremely terrible. He can destroy a virtual country starfield with a wave of his hand, and even the 6-mark virtual respect can only walk through a few patterns under his hand. If it wasn't about to leave the virtual universe, Jian Wushuang would naturally kill the living forces of each star field all the way. At the same time, he was also a bit strange. The virtual universe seemed a little quiet. Until novel. Except for the prosperous star domain sending virtual respect to the extraterrestrial battlefield, there was no movement. The zombie goddess of that virtual universe must be able to easily sense the breath of Jian Wushuang, and even the phages parasitic in the virtual universe have no response. Is it really because it's too low-key? The naive, who had changed into a white shirt, awakened from his sleep, and after whispering, rushed to the rear of Jian Wushuang, holding the sword's corner tightly with his hand. For today's naivety, Jian Wushuang regrets it more. Seeing the naivety like a bow-struck bird, he seems to see the ancestor Feng Tian, who is weird in temperament and has a mind-bound universe. Jian Wushuang jumped off the railing, urging divine power to appease the naive. Like the naive of a frightened bird, it slowly calmed down, but he couldn't let go of his hands. The 27 star domains, plus the culprit, the imaginary righteousness, all paid for this little boy. Chapter 4600. After learning that Feng Tian's ancestor died, the young child sat for 7 days in a row, as if the soul had been taken away, without any belief or dependence. Even the Taoist Supreme could not persuade the slightest. In the end, it was Jian Wushuang who said something to her. And then she woke up from a dead seat. When he first came out of the fairy land, he realized the extreme evil of the universe, which is fatal to the purest and immature naive. The only thing that Jian Wushuang can do now is to troubleshoot. We have at least 1 day left before we can reach the crack, Jian Wushuang said. It's just that the cracks that want to come to the crack should be tighter. Those guys are already waiting for us there. Even if it was the 20 Liuxiu and Shuzuan sitting in the cracks, Jian Wushuang also confidently defended Daoyan and the Taoist to the divine universe. But eating the tissue and the zombie is his heart trouble. Without a perfect strategy, Jian Wushuang will never let them break free. I'll go through the barriers first. You wait in the nearby star field. If I'm fine, I'll pick you up. If I can't come back within 7 days, you elder Daoyan dormant, and wait until the crack is weak, then break out. Wushuang said. Daoyan just wanted to speak, and Daoyan reached out and stopped him, then said, everything is heard by the master of the Wushuang Palace. Even if we go together, we also add trouble to the master of the Wushuang Palace. Jian Wushuang nodded his head. When he was about to leave, the naive pulled his horns again, and said timidly, do not leave me with a smelly chess basket. Jian Wushuang rubbed the naive bun with his hand. Wait for 2 days, and I will come back to pick you up at most. The chubby gritted his teeth, and then let go of his palm. Jian Wushuang's heart was sour, and after taking an oath, he rushed into the crack. 1 year may be a long time for ordinary creatures, but for monks, it is almost just a blink of an eye. What sword warriors gambled was that the zombies did not strengthen their arrangement, and went to the 23 cracks again. As soon as he stepped into the encirclement of the crack, a thick death gas rushed towards him. He hesitated for a moment, and those vanity corpses that were easily killed were still scattered in the void, and their positions had not changed. In addition, there is no living breath. Hasn't it been deployed this year? And no one knows what happened here? Jian Wushuang couldn't believe it. The situation here has not been found on duty in a year. According to the treacherous nature of the zombie god, it is impossible not to guard here. Are they not in the virtual universe? With this in mind, Jian Wushuang was so pleased that he was preparing to test his advance. A violent breath burst out of the crack. Jian Wushuang was startled, and immediately released his divine power to wait. The next moment, the crack enchantment was suddenly opened, and a figure suddenly jumped into the virtual universe. Jian Wushuang's pupils froze suddenly. Zombie? At this moment, the zombie god. His black robe was shattered, and the exposed skin scales were like being peeled alive by giant force, exposing the dark gray flesh. The 9 heads of the zombie symbol are only 2 at the moment, and the broken neck cavity has just healed the blood. It seems that the zombie who may die at any time, after seeing Jian Wushuang's figure in front of him, could not help but tremble, and the 2 pairs of vertical pupils were also darkened. It's you, Jian Wushuang? Jian Wushuang didn't open his mouth, and his breath reaching the pinnacle already showed his attitude. Feeling his rising horror, the zombie resisted the uneasiness in his heart, and said in a deep voice, why are you here? Get away quickly, otherwise this seat doesn't mind killing you in place. Oh, it's just you now. God's tattoos appeared on the black robe. Jian Wushuang looked at him with a sneer. I don't mind, you can try it now. After he noticed the change in his breath, the zombie face looked as if he was dead. How could you? Jian Wushuang knows that when a person is ill, his life will be killed. Even if he pulls out the Taro Excalibur, he will directly release the 5th form of the Terra Sword. The huge Taro treasure is condensed in the heavens and the earth. Unlike the previous one, a big round of sun appears at the same time on the top of the Taro treasure. Looking at the sword that came out of the sky, the zombie that was almost exhausted and could not hold it anymore, he growled. Sword unparalleled, you can't kill me. Once I die, all the secrets will disappear, including the news of your master Xuani. Jian Wushuang trembled in his heart, and the giant Tai Luo Bao deflected, almost falling with the zombie. Infinite sword rushes wantonly, directly tearing up the starry sky. The zombie fled a little later, and the entire left arm was directly crushed by the sword. Reaching for a gap, He pulled the zombie figure directly in front of him. Jian Wu's eyes sink like water. Tell me all the secrets you know, and I will spare you. The ugly face of the zombie was twisted by the pain, making it even more ugly. A gleam of blood spilled from the corners of the mouth, and the zombie was half resentful and half jealous. Only after 10,000 years, you have grown into a terrible place. Sword unparalleled, what kind of monster are you? Jian Wuxia held the palm of the zombie's neck firmly. Don't sell me, as soon as I push hard you will die. The zombie heard the words and laughed strangely. Kill me, and another person will replace me soon. Can you kill all of Jian Wuxia? If you kill me now, I promise that you will even have the virtual universe next. Cannot go out. When Jian Wuxia was stunned in his heart, and was about to kill him with one palm, the zombie suddenly said, Do you know who I worship now? Even if you can resist with me in the chamber now, there are several equivalent powers my guy is here. Can you handle it? You're looking for death. Jian Wuxia sighed and slammed his palm. The zombie's throat made a squeaking sound. Listen to me. And now do as I say. Go to the extreme sea. I guarantee you no trouble. Jian Wuxia was about to open his mouth, and began to escape outside the crack in the void. They are here. And if you don't do what I say, you and I will die here. The zombie slowly closed his eyes and stopped speaking. Feeling that horror was getting closer and closer, Jian Wuxia gritted his teeth, dragged directly like a dead dog zombie, and swept towards the depths of the virtual universe behind him. When the two bodies completely disappeared, 23 cracked junctions were directly torn. A number of perimeters of surging forceless body emerged. How could there be a breath of divine power here? Is the zombie dead? If you want to see alive, if you want to see a dead body, you must not let him live any longer. Observe. Chapter 46:01. In the lonely and lonely remote starfield, there is no living breath left, and a cosmic boat jumps and shuttles. On this deck, the sturdy zombies by chains of divine strength, divine power chained, breathing heavily on his back. Tao Yin Supreme and Taoist resemble the enemy. Master of Wuxia Palace, why did you bring him here? The man moving the mountain road looked anxious. It would be better for us to kill this person now, and the province has created variables. I said, little guy, we have seen each other by chance. Do you want me to die like this? The two remaining heads of the zombie are facing the mountain mover together with strange faces. The divine power was transformed into a pair of piercings, which tied his two mouths directly, and Ho Jian Wuxia smiled bitterly, and told what happened to them. After listening, Dao Yin frowned and came slowly to the snake god, questioning, Do you know the news of Xianyi? Jian Wuxia waved his hand to remove the power from his mouth, and the zombie laughed. Of course I know, but I can't say now, this is my whole card. When will I be out of danger? I will say listen. Aren't you afraid I will kill you now? Jian Wuxia said coldly. The ugly face of the zombie shook, and then smiled overcast. Of course I believe, but you kill me now. I guarantee that none of you can live safely. You can only reach a safe place if I live. If you dare play tricks, I don't mind pulling you back before dying. Rest assured, I love my own life and want be able to live with me. No one was talking, and a lingering haze was covering Jian Wuxia's heart. In order to prevent the naive from seeing the stress response of the zombie, Jian Wuxia used the divine power to make the naive go to sleep earlier. For 7 days, according to the route given by the snake god, the cosmic boat had already deviated from the normal star field. Looking into the eyes, the starry sky changed from crystal blue to extremely dark and dirty. At the same time, a dark giant sea floats in the starry sky and flows into the depths of the universe. Wow! This is a continent that grows in the dark sea. Without the sun, the sky is always a chaotic color that will fall at dusk. The spacecraft was stranded on the gray dirt, and the dying zombie was hung by the sword unparalleled on the bow. Hurry, throw me into the sea. The zombie eyes stared at the dark sea with red eyes. Jian Wuxia didn't ignore him, but explored this strange continent growing on the sea with Dao Yin Supreme. Waving for a handful of black water in the giant sea, the The strange energy suddenly boiled in the hands of Jian Wushuang. What kind of power is this? Jian Wushuang widened his eyes and looked at the boiling black water in the palm of his hand. Neither belonged to divine power nor virtual power? Seeing the supremacy of Dao Yen, she also felt a handful of black water. Sure enough, it's not divine or virtual. It's really weird. How can this kind of place produce another kind of energy in the two extreme universes? Jian Wushuang looked subconsciously at the head of the universe, but found that the snake did not know when it had disappeared. When his heart sank, Jian Wushuang directly released the vast divine power. Tao Yin Supreme, and the Taoists saw their divine power in a flash. The weird laughter resounded from the deck of the cosmic boat, and saw the zombie who turned into a snake awake in the lower body, and appeared in front of the crowd with a baby. The sword was unparalleled, and the blood was rushing, his eyes were red. Animal, how dare you? The zombie ignored his anger and said ruthlessly, "Release the yoke on me, or I'll let her die immediately." The naive cried out in pain, and her neck was already bruised. Forbearing his smashed corpse, Jian Wushuang said, "Yes, but you dare to hurt her for half a point. I promise you that even if you have the means to reach the sky, I will destroy you all." As soon as the zombie's erect pupil condensed, the palm that had been gradually exerted gradually released. And just at the moment, the childish child suddenly took out a copper golem from his arms and smashed it in the head of the zombie. The screams sounded, and the zombie pained and let go of the naive. The sword was unparalleled, and the Taro sword in his hand threw it directly. In response to the storm, the Excalibur broke through, and it was just a face-to-face meeting that cut off a head of the zombie god. As a Changhong, he swept towards the cosmic boat, and Jian Wushuang slammed his blood on the last head of the zombie again. "Don't kill me. All the secrets you want to know disappear." The zombie lost his previous een, and fear of death forced him to beg for mercy. With another punch, Jian Wushuang twisted his neck and choked him up. "Say, if you don't tell a secret that pleases me now, I will let you die. Say, I say." The zombie nodded his head and mourned. "Like the polar sea right now, it was not born out of our two universes at all, but landed from an unknown place due to an accident. Brought together." Jian Wushuang smiled coldly. "What kind of secret is this? Do you really want to die?" The zombie shook his head, and then said in a vacant look, "Do you really think that the divine universe and the virtual universe are the ultimate?" Jian Wushuang stunned. "Keep talking." I don't know anything. The existence of it is no longer accessible to me." The zombie regained his composure, and there were various unexplainable emotions in the vertical pupil. "What I know is only it's my guess, but you should be able to imagine the ultimate of all these things." Jian Wushuang no longer asked more. After adding dozens of bands on the zombie, he was thrown on the deck at will. After doing this, Jian Wushuang quickly walked to the innocent child hiding. "Little girl, are you okay?" With a pair of eyes flushed, the immature child shook her head vigorously, and then raised the bronze symbol in her hand. "You smelled the chest basket you saved me. This is what you gave to my master. Now I will return it to you." That piece of bronze symbol is nothing else. It was the chaotic Wuding Ding that was given to Feng Tian's ancestors by Sword Wushuang in exchange for things. Feeling the familiar atmosphere from Ding, Jian Wushuang shook his head gently and stuffed Ding again. "This tripod is not very useful to stay with me. Just stay on your body for your defense." The naive heard the words and shook his head stubbornly. "No, master said that he must hand it to you. This respect will be of great use to you in the future." After a short pause, Hina said, "I don't need the protection of this tripod. You said you would protect me." Without further comment, Jian Wushuang finally put Ding in her hands. Chapter 4602. Even if the essence of the five spirits is gathered, Chaos Wudi Ding is not very useful to Jian Wushuang, because even now, he can't understand a few points. Instead of staying with him, it's better to keep it next to the naive just in case. Judging from the results of the mace of the zombie just now, the effect of Chaos Wuding Ding is still good. To appease the naive, Jian Wushuang came to Dao Yin Supreme and said in a conscientious voice, "Elder Dao Yen, move elder. How do you think that guy just said?" In order to prevent the snake god from eavesdropping, Jian Wushuang wrapped his entire head with divine power. Dao Yen groaned a little, and finally shook his head. "It's incredible. I can't imagine what kind of existence exists besides the divine universe and the void universe. In my opinion, even as the duality of things, the two sides of the universe are already the ultimate of everything." The Taoist who moved the mountain nodded and nodded. His mind was in agreement with Dao Yen, because the divine universe is too vast. It encompasses almost all realms, and the limits of all living beings. Even if the cosmic will begins to recover, it is just another new life of the universe. Is there another universe besides the divine universe and the void universe? Dao Yen Supreme was born at the beginning of the universe, and at the beginning of chaos. His opinions will more or less affect the judgment of Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang is also willing to believe that the two universes are the ultimate of everything. But he always feels that the words of the zombie were not just mad when he went crazy. He should have glimpsed what remains of civilization in ancient times, or heard I learned what I shouldn't listen to. Jian Wushuang looked away. The polar sea is deep, and the infinite sea is without waves, as if a mirror that is completely black has been preserved for a long time. How could this polar sea that straddles the starry sky, but not melt into the virtual universe, and exist independently? Reaching out to disperse the divine power on the head of the zombie, Jian Wushuang held him directly and swept towards the edge of the polar sea. Ben was dying, and a zombie who was about to fall. After he noticed that he was close to the polar sea, he immediately became restless. Put me in, put me in." Jian Wushuang didn't open his mouth, but stopped at the polar coast, and reached out to hang the zombie in the polar sea. Let me go, let me go." The zombie struggled uneasily. He waved a handful of dark water, and that weird wave of energy breathed away again. With a little thought, Jian Wushuang poured the black water in his hand on the broken arm of the zombie. Black water seemed to be born with wisdom, like a creeping serpent. It instantly fell into the wound, and innumerable dark granulations sprang up and built up with each other, which actually came faster than God's remodeling. Jian Wu's eyes were swift and fast, and he reached out to cut off the clustered granulation. The zombie trembled. His pupils were like a needle tip. Sword unparalleled, Yuet. Without paying attention to the wrath of the zombie god, Jian Wushuang threw the zombie on the shore, and then said quietly, "Of course you want to enter this extreme sea. Open your source of life to me and let me plant a ban." "You dream. What a nasty junior." The zombie gritted his teeth and stared at Jian Wushuang resentfully. With a cold smile, Jian Wushuang lifted his feet and kicked the zombie far away. At the same time, dozens of Huang gods transformed into prison cages of divine power, trapping him in the formation. "Don't try to break through. For you now, you can't stand the 10 breaths," Jian Wushuang reminded, and then flew straight into the endless sea. The zombie god's eyes were fixed, and his revenge glanced up suddenly. "Sword unparalleled. This mantra you lost in this extreme sea, and perpetually sink." Stepping into this extreme sea area, a special forbidden breath directly caused the discomfort of the divine power in Jian Wushuang. The forbidden atmosphere seemed to be chaotic and unruly, the barbarism of the original wasteland, and a mysterious suppression from the level of life, making Jian Wushuang the whole person bad. Jingshou Xintai, Jian Wushuang dispelled that weird feeling, and continued to ascend above the polar sea. He had an inexplicable intuition that Fang Jihai seemed to be calling him. The dark and infinite sea surface is like a deep mirror, and even if it is Jian Wushuang, occasionally looking at the sea, it is dizzy. In order to prevent the loss of direction, Jian Wushuang placed a cage of divine power on the zombie's body cloth, and can feel the distance from the shore at any time. But at the moment, Jian Wushuang felt the breath of the divine power, left on the shore, and rushed towards himself, at a very fast speed. Jian Wushuang's heart tightened, and that bad hunch finally came. A dark beam of light galloping across the strangely still polar sea. But it has not been seen clearly. A blaze of energy emerged from the sky, aiming at the sword Wushuang sinking down. "OM." Divine patterns emerged. The vast divine power turned into a light wall and appeared in front of the swordless pair. The two collided, and at the same time, the dark and vigorous on shattered the light wall. Jian Wushuang frowned, and he found that it was the zombie who sent such a fierce blow. At this moment, the zombie had a broken arm and was born again. He had only one head left. I don't know when he gave birth to 8 more, and the black mist poured from every inch of his pores. The scarlet-red mang escaped from the 9 pairs of vertical pupils, and the glance toward Xiang Wushuang was not mixed with the slightest emotion. The prestige of the ancestral and semi-ancestor class made Jian Wushuang not dare to act lightly. Although he roughly understood that he can currently fight the semi-ancestor class without losing, but that is also based on the use of ancestral techniques. This situation is a great disadvantage for Jian Wushuang. He didn't understand how the zombie came back to the top in a very short time and locked himself in. The weird zombie with a weird smile on his face and 9 mouths opened at the same time. Sword unparalleled. Don't restrain the most taboo existence in your heart, release it. This is a bliss world. Don't you like killing people too? There are many people you kill here. Jian Wushuang's brow was tightly frowned. When he was about to release his divine power, he saw the polar sea beneath him like a mirror, and suddenly it boiled. A figure with thick ink-like mucus appeared slowly. Jian Wushuang, you pay me back. The sound was screaming, and the ice cream snorkeler, who exuded a dark mist, came with power. Jian Wushuang's pupils calmed and soon calmed down again, sighing coldly. Have you even moved out of the hallucinations? I can kill you once, why not kill you a second time? With Bingyu Supreme taking the lead in slaying, the figures that had died in the hands of the sword without hands appeared one by one. You were a messy person during your lifetime. Shouldn't it be a messy person after death? Chapter 4603. The monstrous warfare rushed into the sky. Countless red gold patterns appeared on the whole body, and the sword power transformed by the divine power was like a rushing river, which directly smashed the imagination, such as the ice morning supreme, into pieces. The world is crying. The strange sounds go straight to Jiuxiao, and everything is gone like a magic barrier. Waving his hand to dispel the black smoke in front of his eyes, Jian Wushuang snorted coldly. Sculpture of carving insects. The zombie standing in the distance laughed strangely. Sword unparalleled. I will never let you live in this world. Sink in my imagination. The words fell, and a giant zombie who wanted to stand with the sky came out, and the 9 snake heads that almost broke the sky seemed like the 9 rounds. Jian Wushuang was also unwilling to show weakness. He turned his fists into palms and punched out the divine pattern, directly condensing a glorious heavenly gate above the dark sky. Shocks reached the world, and even the calm polar sea shook waves. The next moment, the 9 sunbursts easily tore the sky, carrying endless momentum, and slammed into the sword Wushuang. The magnificent Tianmen hole opened, and one of the giant fingers of the sky also fell heavily. Unlike the previous one, this finger is out, and another giant finger is coming. The first head of the snake hit the sky giant finger, enough to crush the aftermath of any star country burst, completely burst. As the polar sea of the water mirror is completely overturned, the huge waves of the sky and the sky will swallow up the broken sky. Jian's body shape plummeted, and the ears and noses were full of blood. One finger twisted a snake head and one snake head, and 2 incompatible vast forces were completely crushed together. The sky is instantly broken, all the stars are lost, and the cracks in the sky stretch for millions of miles. Polar sea shore. Sitting in the cosmic boat, Dao Yen and Dao Shan Taoist Chi Chi opened their eyes, and hurriedly came to Zhoutu to look deep into the extreme sea. I saw the sky there was broken, the stars were broken, the starry sky was wiped out stiffly, and the violent howling wind peculiar to the void poured into this polar sea area. A scene of extinction. Master of Wushuang Palace, I'm afraid it's in danger. Daoyan Supreme frowned and looked away. What to do? Shall we help the master of the Wushuang Palace? Said the Taoist. Wait a second. Because of the restrictions we face in this virtual universe, it's just a matter of trouble. Daoyan shook his head. And the zombie trapped in the cage of divine power, still curled up in the cage, covered with blood, there is no trace of recovery. He also noticed the scent of destruction that came from the depths of the extreme sea, and the erect pupil of the Yin gaze looked distantly. It's weird, why would I want him to pass it? The heavenly gate above the broken sky is already dim. After killing 6 snake heads one after another, Jian Wushuang is about to reach the point of exhaustion. And the dark mist surging around that dark zombie has disappeared. Sword unparalleled, you it. Only the 3 snake heads of the huge zombie demon uttered a shout of rage. After you are beheaded and killed, all the creatures of the divine universe will be swallowed up by me. The fury ignited instantly. Jian Wushuang only felt hot. And the style of Tianmenjiu who defeated the true shadow of the virtual came again. Countless gods emerged. Thousands of gods and treasures carried the power of the gods directly to the zombie ghost. Just for a moment, like thousands of big suns exploding together. In the presence of the extreme day, the zombie virtual state is also as small as a sea chestnut. Like the water droplets under the red sun, the huge imagination disappeared completely. The sky gate suspended in the broken dome dissipated at the same time, and turned into a speckled star pattern, and returned to Jian Wushuang's body. He coughed, and then wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth with his sleeve. Huang divine power dispersed day by day, and only a faint layer of black and gray remained in the position of the snake god, which dispersed with the wind. Finally, is it dead? The zombie figure dissipated, but Jian Wushuang always felt that something was wrong. The next moment, those black and white ash that are about to fall away, but they are coagulating. The most unwilling Jian Shuang to see, even helpless figure came. Su Shun. Jian Wuhuang trembled, his mouth bitter. That condensed figure is the pinnacle of the void universe, and a single palm is enough to kill any invincible supreme god. That is the nightmare that Jian Wushuang still does not want to face. His return will represent the countdown to the complete destruction of the magical universe. No, it can't be him. How could he return from the seal of the god of gods so quickly? All these are illusions. Jian Wushuang shook his head vigorously, as if to disperse the figure from his mind. The horror figure hidden in the black mist was surging with imagination, and 2 pairs of red eyes looked at Jian Wushuang without any emotion. I said that we will meet again. Jian Wushuang trembled. Facing this ancestral existence, he knew that all escape was futile. Like the burning black flames of the same group, Xian Shun waved a picture in the sky. I saw that in that magnificent scroll, countless star domain fuckingdoms were destroyed by the invading vanity, and countless souls were easily killed in this catastrophe. From the trafficker to death, to the invincible supreme, all died in blood. Jian Wushuang saw that his children and grandchildren were slaughtered by a 6-spot Su Zun in resistance, as cold as a frost, and the fairy fell into the mountain stream, and the giant axe's head was cut off by his own axe. The Cold King 9 calamities finally exploded in the extraterrestrial battlefield. Everything is paved with blood. No, don't. Jian Wushuang was completely insane. How can I take the first step? Like a ghostly ghost, his body flickered like a mist, and a low voice sounded from his mouth. Submit to me. I promise you that your loved ones, and you will continue to live and enjoy the glory of the past. The long hair that broke the girdle danced wildly in the air, and the already dim divine pattern skyrocketed again. Jian Wushuang is completely crazy, his eyes are red, and an invisible long sword has slowly formed from his right hand. You all, wait for me. The last soft word sounded from Jian Wushuang's mouth. He held up the invisible sword condensed by the pattern in his hand, and transformed himself into a Tao. Xingha Huhai Jiani, the first style Xing. The polar sea is completely turbulent, and the huge waves rising from the sky are completely integrated with the broken sky. A little star is born as if in the ancient floods. With the invisible sword body, the divine power condenses the sword handle, the long wind gathers the blade, the pattern injects it in between, and it becomes the kendo, the most ordinary and magnificent sword, with his ultimate kendo completely released. The world is clear, the gods are magnificent. Wait for me. I will be with you soon. that you're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support. And don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.